Pat Grudy, President.
For September 29th to order. If I could ask everybody to please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America, and
to the republic for which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Jim Batson,
Here.
Don Carmichael,
Here.
Pat Grudy,
Here.
Lisa Hessel,
Here.
Kevin Huber,
Here.
Karen Lundstedt,
Here.
Casey Rooney.
Here.
So we know all the board members are present for the record here. Okay, our agenda, we'll open it up first for public comment. And I believe we're gonna read all of the comments we have. I think we're at a relatively small number of comments. And I'll make one comment there. A lot of residents have asked us when we read the comments, how do we choose which ones to read? They are read in the order that they're received, okay? So there is no selection of what we read. There have been times where per board policy, we're able to limit those comments, but they're always read in the order that they're received. And again, tonight we expect to read all of the sent in specifically for this meeting. There'll be updates from our student school board reps, and then I have a few comments in my president's report. We'll have the superintendent's report, and that's where we will spend the bulk of our conversation in regards to the school reopening. We'll approve the consent vote agenda, also approve the consent vote agenda, which was reviewed earlier in the week or earlier in the month. And then brief updates on program and personnel and facilities and finance. Jim, is there anything on IASB?
No, not at this time.
CEDAW? Karen? No? Okay. And that should be it. All right. Any questions before we start? Okay. Let's open it to public comment, and I'm going to pass it to
Mary to do communications.
Okay, the first letter I have is from Ann Widman, was received on September 22nd at 7:50 p.m. First of all, thank you to our teachers for doing all they can to teach our children despite the circumstances. I am confused about one thing. Why are other Lake County public schools able to return to in-person or hybrid learning and LHS is not, when all Lake County schools are following the same guidelines? If space is the issue, why not partner with District 70 and share space? If Highland Middle School has kids in person on Monday and Tuesday and is closed for cleaning on Wednesday, LHS could use Highland Middle School and their classrooms and 2 gyms to accommodate more LHS students on Thursdays and Fridays, as one example. I realize that safety is a concern, but depression, aggressive behavior, isolation, and learning deficits are also very unsafe behaviors. I also want to point out that your teachers have not been trained for remote learning and have seen firsthand the detriments of this. Instructions are often verbal only, when all educators and trainers know learning and recall are optimized when information is heard, seen, and read. Teachers continue to give information verbally with very little being written in Google Classroom. If Wi-Fi cuts out for 2 minutes, students can miss key information or instructions and there is no fallback. This has happened to my kids more than once, and teachers are rigid and inflexible and are not adapting their teaching practices and tools to accommodate the new world order. Say, write, read, repeat. We all know they are doing their best, but they were simply not trained for remote learning, and our kids are paying the price. If liability is driving your decision, which it should not be, education should be the driving factor, then have the legal team draw up an airtight waiver that absolves the school and district from damages if a child is infected. Please do the right thing and return our kids to school. The damages you are doing to them by withholding a proper education are far greater than the risk of a COVID infection. The second letter is from Sue Sarah, and it was received on Wednesday, September 23rd at 11:39 a.m. As you hopefully have heard, our community is very frustrated with the lack of a plan to introduce kids back to the building. If there is a plan, we sure would like to hear it. Below are some facts about our area. District 70 Libertyville Elementary Schools are doing 2 days a week, 2 hours a day hybrid. Numerous grade schools have kids in buildings. Glenbrook North and South are starting a hybrid open on October 5th. Crystal Lake and other McHenry schools are doing the same. Lake Forest Schools opening, Palatine District 15 opening, Oak Grove has been open a month, no issues. Barrington Schools opening, Wheeling Schools opening. In Libertyville and Vernon Hills, we have a collective 48,000 residents, 600 cases. That is a 1.25% chance of getting COVID, not dying from it. In Lake County, population is 697,000. There were 463 deaths, of which 314 were in nursing homes. There have been 0 reported deaths under the age of 40. This is on the Lake County COVID Hub page. What is your plan? Our kids are miserable, sitting alone in rooms or basements all day, muted on Zoom calls. My daughters have always loved school, loved their classes and teachers. Now they don't love school. In fact, they hate it. They simply cannot continue to be your plan. I beg you all to keep the data and severity of this virus in perspective. You have the choice to give us a choice. Dozens of schools are giving their students and teachers a choice to return to the building. Teachers who do not want to return can stream their classes from home, and maybe they can retire or take some time off. Kids who want to stay home should have that choice. Plenty of districts are offering these options. Has anyone talked to the folks from the districts listed above? Has anyone realized that all our kids have been doing for the last 6 months, hanging out for the last 6 months, are not totally fine? I'd like to know how we can be heard at your next meeting. Are you meeting in person yet? Can we come to the meeting? Have you provided a survey to parents? If you truly care, one or all of you will attend this event next week. And she references at the bottom the information for the rally that was held earlier this evening at Cook Park. I would like this letter read at the meeting minutes. The next letter is from Ian Kazian, and it was received today at 1:00 p.m. As previously expressed to you in my letter dated September 28th, I am requesting the District 128 Board of Education reopen school for in-person learning. The CDC, Illinois Department of Public Health, and the Lake County Health Department have presented guidelines for opening schools safely for both teachers and students. They have stated, schools are an essential part of the infrastructure of communities as they provide safe, supportive learning environments for students, employees, teachers, and other staff, and enable parents, guardians, and caregivers to go to work. Furthermore, the Governor's Restore Illinois Plan Phase 4 allows for schools to reopen. I appreciate that the board has done their due diligence and deferred opening to see what the state, region, and county COVID cases would do. Cases have remained flat, as has hospitalizations. Additionally, during the August regular board meeting, it was stated that more information would be utilized to see how school openings are going in places where that's happened. There are numerous examples across the country, state, and nationally where that has been done successfully and safely for both the students and teachers. One example is just 2 miles down the road from LHS. I would like to express my sincere support and appreciation for the District 128 board, administrators, teachers, and staff members that make District 128 one of the top school districts in the country. I have no doubt everyone will work together to do what is right for our students.
Mary to do communications.
The next message is from Michelle Thompson, and it was received today at 3:23 p.m. I wanted to express my sincerest thank you to our teachers for all of their hard work and efforts. It is extremely apparent that they are going above and beyond, doing so much additional work in order to best teach our children during this time. It is much appreciated. They are connecting in many ways and problem solving wherever it arises. Many thanks also to our administrators and board for all of the additional hours that they have put in as well. And the last letter is from Mike Mulligan. It was received today at 3:48 p.m. Using publicly available data from the Lake County, Illinois Coronavirus Data Hub and suburbanstats.org population data, I analyzed the impact of the coronavirus on the population of Lake County, Illinois through September 22nd, 2020. I have determined that in Lake County, the two age segments that have contracted the virus at the highest rate are 20 to 29 and 80 plus year olds at 4.4% and 4.5% respectively. Alternatively, only 1.2% of the under 20 segment has contracted the virus. All other segments range from 2.2% to 2.6%. Libertyville and Vernon Hills have cumulatively witnessed a total of 1.66% and 1.25% of residents contracting the virus since January. The Lake County death rate, which is the number of deaths divided by the number who have contracted the virus, is 0% for all people under the age of 40. For the segments of people aged 40 to 49 and 50 to 59, the death rate is 0.8% and 1.4% respectively. Of the 578,255 people under the age of 60 living in Lake County, a total of 50 have died due to the coronavirus, 29 of which had an underlying health condition, asthma, diabetes, obesity, etc. The highest death rate in Lake County are in those with underlying medical conditions and those over the age of 60. In summary, people in Lake County, Libertyville, and Vernon Hills have contracted the virus. Tragically, some have paid the ultimate price. Fortunately, the numbers are very small and represent a low risk to people under 60 years of age who don't have an underlying health condition. John F. Kennedy put people on the moon in 8 years. Abbott Labs developed rapid tests for the coronavirus in a few short months. Fire, police, EMTs, and medical professionals found ways to manage the risk with minimal downtime. We collectively understand that each family, student, teacher, and administrator has their own unique circumstance that needs to be considered. But we have the responsibility to each other that no attorney can get between. We are better than this. Given the smart and talented people we have working in our district, on our school board, and living within our communities, we collectively owe it to each other to demonstrate to our students that we care enough to solve this challenge. It won't be easy, but the best accomplishments in life are the most memorable. I implore you to ask yourself, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Let's move now and move quickly. Our children are counting on us. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Next, student school board representatives. I'll let you guys kind of sort through who's going to go in.
Student representatives.
So LHS is going to begin with presenting our thoughts on eSchool and the structure so far. So over the past few weeks, we've collected student responses and feedback through social media regarding the structure of e-learning. And following is a summary of many students' thoughts. Some positives: so far, students have appreciated the block schedule on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Many think the workload is ideal, especially since they have more than one day to complete work for each class. It also gives students enough time to understand the material and practice on their own instead of moving on to a new topic every day if we had the regular school schedule. These increased amounts of times allows especially seniors to dedicate their time more to college applications. Synchronous classes have also allowed students to engage more instead of having every day be asynchronous, similar to last spring. Since students are actively in class and on camera, many feel that they are more motivated and they can focus more on schoolwork. Many also think that teachers are adapting very well to the online format of tests, quizzes, and teaching platforms. Office hours are also very appreciated by students since they can receive additional help, and it is a simple process to schedule meeting calls with teachers. As for improvements that can be made, the majority of students have agreed that a Wednesday regular schedule is very tiring and ineffective for learning. Although it's only one day of the week and is the same schedule as last year, it feels much more rushed when compared to in-school learning. Since we usually have block scheduling, students feel as if their teachers are attempting to fit more material into a shorter amount of time. For example, a teacher giving the same lecture that they would give on a block schedule day makes students feel stressed with the overload of information in only 45 minutes. This goes along with the workload on Wednesdays as well. Since we learn more material in a shorter amount of time, we are given more work that is due the next day. Another problem is that some students do not have a lunch period, and they have no time to eat or even grab a quick snack during the day due to the short 5 minutes between each period. Unlike the other days of the week, there is no built-in lunch period on Wednesdays. This can be detrimental to learning because students cannot have a break from their computers to refresh their minds. The perceived solution to this is having Wednesdays be entirely asynchronous so that students can dedicate more time to the subjects they struggle in, and so they can move at their own pace. After communicating with students, it also appears that many are unaware of the school's online resources, including the MASH and Bright Plays. Students can receive additional help during any periods of the day or before and after school. The links to the MASH Zoom calls are found on the school website under the Student Services and Resource Areas tab. Listed is the MASH schedule as well as which teachers are available during each period.
Student representatives.
Students have also expressed how tired they were of being expected to perform at the same level as before the pandemic. They wish the expectations of them change or at least gradually ease into the old expectations. And as for hopes of the students, many hope to advance to some stage of hybrid learning in the future, and this is already being observed with some fine arts classes and other approved classes being brought back to school. And that's all for the LHS, and now the student representatives for Vernon Hills will present their thoughts on eSchool.
Student representatives.
Thank you, Marilyn. So, Eva, she specifically said that e-learning, at least she thought was working out really well for her so far, that she's engaged in class, her teachers make themselves readily available, and even though it's difficult, like she said, she feels really supported and doesn't necessarily stress any more than she would if she was in school in person. One thing that she does have to comment on, which Marilyn touched on as well, is that the hardest part would definitely be those synchronous Wednesdays, which is something I agree on as well. Everything just feels quite rushed and stressful, something that my classmates have spoken to me on, and I would assume all the other board reps have heard as well. Kayla says that she thinks it's a great opportunity to see what she can learn while at school and combine that with being self-motivated as opposed to being motivated by teachers and the overall flow of regular learning. She also feels like she has a lot more opportunities to get close to her teachers and friends that she didn't think would be possible in school, believe it or not. But I agree with that fully. Office hours are now readily taken advantage of, and it gives you a lot of one-on-one time and interaction. She also thinks it's nice to be able to just make your food and let it sit warmly in front of you while you're learning in class. And basically those are all my thoughts as well. I'm able to communicate with my teachers really well. Everyone's readily on emails. There's way less commute time overall. My college apps are easily accessible if I finish class early. The school assignment for the next day isn't particularly demanding. I can just hop on Common App and tie up whatever I was doing before and just push my work for later. You could call it procrastinating. I call it redistributing work. As a whole, I mean, if you're diligent with your work, you take accountability for what you have in front of you. E-learning is really not that bad, not at all. Can't complain. That'll be all from Vernon Hills.
Pat Grudy, President.
So can I ask a couple of questions before we go to the rest of the updates? I mean, those two reports are relatively positive on the overall e-learning experience, which is, I got to be honest, somewhat disconnected from a lot of the feedback we get from residents. So are you hearing that in the hallway? Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, I would say I understand fully what you're saying, and I would say talking to my neighbors, that's where I see the most discontent. So I'm the high school kid in the cul-de-sac, so they'll be coming up to me while I'm walking my dog, be like, man, isn't that e-learning getting terrible? Isn't this and that? It seems like the older population sees it much worse than it is because I don't think they're the ones in the classroom learning. Obviously, I've heard a lot of my classmates like strongly complain about it and everything, but the reason I didn't necessarily echo that in my report, and I think I could speak for all of us, is that the majority of those complaints have a lot of passion to them, but not necessarily correlate with like how well e-learning is going in terms of their learning. It's just strictly them like vocalizing their distaste and displeasure for the things that they like about school being missing. But those are really opinions, and I think as a whole, students and have told me that they're just grateful that their teachers are trying their best. that they're trying their best and that we're just learning in some way, shape, and form, which is why I think we all kind of stuck to that more upbeat report instead of focusing on those negatives there.
Okay, thanks, Diego. Amal, go ahead. I can tell you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, because we worked all summer with the task force, so I feel like it gives us an inside perspective of what actually goes into like planning each part of like e-school, like of just actually going back. And there's a lot of factors that I personally would have never thought of if like I wasn't a part of the task force or if I didn't attend any board meetings. So that kind of like made me more understanding and more appreciative for what I have and for like the materials and like the content that we're learning, because like we put in a lot of effort to perfect e-school, and now like there's a lot of factors that go into like actual school, like in-person learning, that a lot of people, I feel like it gets brushed over, which I personally probably would have brushed over if I didn't attend those meetings, which see like right now I'm like actually like I honestly don't like, I think e-learning is pretty nice. Headaches are bad, but like we're getting the same thing out of it, and I feel like eventually once it's safe, then like we go back. That's just my thought.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your feedback. Okay, whoever's next. I don't mean to interrupt. I was just really interested in what you had to say.
Student representatives.
Yeah, so before we go on to the LHS board report, can I just say something really quick about that too? So I think that a lot of the students think that e-learning is positive because it's given the circumstances, and of course everyone agrees that nothing is as effective as in-person learning, but we're talking about during the pandemic and the adaptations that teachers have made, and it's much more effective than last spring. Like all the asynchronous, I think now students are held more accountable, and also teachers are doing their best, and they're doing a really great job of just holding us accountable and just adapting to all of the platforms. And I think that learning in general is very effective right now. So I think that's the main reason why a lot of students believe that it's effective learning, even though it's not as good as in-person learning.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Student representatives.
And so now we will be moving on to the LHS board report. So for band, this goes along with classes being brought back into person. On September 23rd, an email was sent to Wind Ensemble students regarding return to campus. The district recently approved Honors Wind Ensemble as one of the few courses prioritized for a return to campus to resume playing together. Attending on-campus course experiences is optional for all students, and a survey was sent out for students to select their course of action. They are tentatively planning for the first day back to be Tuesday, October 6th, with thorough safety precautions planned out. The theater department also performed their first play, A Love Letter, this past weekend in the back parking lot. It was completely socially distanced with 8 separate scenes, all including different storylines. The cars went around the parking lot, stopping at each scene and watching through their windows. This was a very unique experience for both the audience and theater students, and the theater students were very happy with the turnout and performance. LHS senior Pavan Acharya was selected to perform in the Illinois High School Theater Festival All-State Virtual Cabaret Showcase. The virtual performances will be held on November 14th and January 9th at 7:00 p.m. Congratulations to Pavan on this outstanding opportunity. And this is part of Quinn's report on sports. Most sports are currently underway in some form. This includes golf, cross country, swimming, and diving and tennis. It is great to see some of the things we missed about sports coming back. There are senior nights, drum lines, and staff attending competitions, which feels like a big step back toward normalcy. All other sports have started off-season fall training and are taking necessary precautions to ensure athlete safety. Some sports are training up to 3 times a week, and some only train once. Quinn states, as an athlete, it is great to be training again and great to see other teammates and coaches. Although wearing masks through the entirety of sports indoors was challenging to become accustomed to, Quinn speaks from personal experience. He says running up and down the court with limited breathing was tough at first. Athletes are still adapting well. Athletes in outdoor sports wear masks and practice social distancing at all times, except when competing on the field.
Student representatives.
Homecoming month will officially begin in 2 days at LHS. There has been a big change to court this year to set up a new tradition for future Wildcats. The decision has been made to steer away from a group of girls to a group of 26 students, meaning that any student this year and future years to come is eligible for homecoming court. With the new school daring mission, Stuco felt as if the school events had to reflect the school's values and felt as though one person should not represent the whole school's value, which is why we took away Homecoming Queen. But a collective of students should be uplifted, each representing the school through a new light. Voting started Thursday and ended today, and homecoming court will be announced this Friday. Window painting will still occur this year on Sunday, October 4th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. There will also be a reverse drive-in parade on October 10th from 10 to 11 on LHS campus. Students will be invited beforehand to come and decorate the campus. There will be a virtual assembly held all through next week, including groups like choir, poms, cheer, drumline, and guide poms. On October 3rd at 7 p.m., the senior class board is hosting a senior drive-in movie, where there will be a DJ to kick off our senior year. Pre-packaged snacks will be provided, and the court will be safely recognized there. On Sunday, October 3rd, students are invited to paint Butler Lake Path to leave their paw print. Any student is invited to participate. There will be virtual Spirit Week next week, October 5th to 9th to October 9th. Monday is flannel, Tuesday is neon, Wednesday is color wars, staff is orange, but we're blue. Thursday is hat day, and Friday is Wildcat Friday. Make sure you wear your Spirit gear. On Wednesday, September 23rd, seniors came into the building to take the SAT. While entering the school, they were greeted by chalk messages of encouragement written by LHS teachers. That was definitely the happiest I've seen anybody on a test day. It was so welcoming and heartwarming to see classmates that I haven't seen since March and see teachers in person. Drops of Ink September issue comes out online tomorrow, and it will be mailed home early next week. Mr. Lapish and Leaf are nearly finished with the outdoor classroom. The students placed all of the mulch and planted all the plants, and Mr. Lapish spent the entire summer weeding, watering, and tending to the garden. I can't wait to go back and spend my time studying in the courtyard. Starting on September 24th and ongoing for the next week, a virtual activities fair is being held. Clubs are being showcased at specific times over this 2-week period. This allows freshmen to get a sense of what clubs we have at LHS, learn more about them, and receive information if they are interested in joining. Throughout the past few weeks, Ms. Belstra and counselors have been meeting with seniors to discuss their career paths and college interests. Although not in person, they've been very helpful in providing sufficient information and guidance with the college application process. Students have been scheduling meetings for essay reading and general guidance through their counselor's calendar. The CRC has been doing a great job in providing as much help as possible regarding college visits and essay help. Life of a Wildcat and Dr. Nelson have worked hard all month providing students with mental health outlets and shared personal stories to reduce the stigma around mental health. Thank you, Dr. Nelson and Life of a Wildcat, for your hard work and optimism during these times. Green Dot kicks off their first event of the year this Friday. Both senior leadership training and Green Dot bystander training are starting. These programs focus on spreading kindness and limiting negativity throughout the school and community. A Green Dot represents a positive action, and their goal is to spread as many Green Dots all over the school as they can. These training sessions focus on how to stand up for someone or to diffuse a situation to prevent a red dot or a negative action. Green Dot is a key component to changing LHS culture. It makes it clear that we don't accept any of these negative tendencies or acts of violence. That being said, it's important for everyone at LHS to know and understand Green Dot to prevent any red dots from happening. I attended a session last year and can vouch for its effectiveness and positive action. Wear green this Friday on Zoom to support your support for Green Dot. National Honor Society have started weekly meetings attended by filling out Google Forms and watching videos. Students have been told to complete 8 hours of service for semester 1. The virtual induction ceremony is this Thursday at 7 p.m. The first National Honor Society drive will be at PADS and begins Tuesday and runs through October 27th. Seniors were able to come in this last weekend to paint their carpool parking spots. It was heartwarming to see many students choose to represent Black Lives Matter on their parking spot in either a phrase or a drawing. It comes with deep frustration and shock that when a Libertyville resident comes into the parking lot and chooses to verbally harass a senior for showing support for equality. The student was called many names for supporting Black Lives Matter. The admin there was also yelled at. The person continued their actions by attempting to vandalize a student's parking spot by pouring their water over wet paint. To every student who represent Black Lives Matter on their spot, I support you and truly believe you demonstrate how LHS students stand for inclusion and justice in our society.
Student representatives.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, you guys did great. This first part of my report is really tied closely to what we said in our thoughts, so just bear with me quickly. E-learning seems to have a much more positive response than initially expected. Students as a whole seem to report feeling confident in being able to understand and complete their work on time. The legroom offered by e-learning for assignment submission and easy one-on-one availability of teachers leaves little room for falling behind. Almost all my peers are satisfied with and proud of how their teachers are adapting and handling their courses digitally. For example, my AP Music Theory teacher, Mr. Voigt, he sat with me through questions and worked with him and allowed me to work with him well past his office hours regularly without complaints. Today was one of those days, as was Friday last week. This is something that many of my classmates have reported experiencing with many of their teachers as well. They're giving us all the time that they could possibly give us, oftentimes going on pause 30 minutes past office hours to go run down and make a sandwich, come back up, and keep answering our questions. A lot of my students, a lot of my classmates, and I've asked this to many of them, say that they're yet to see anyone act disrespectfully or take advantage of a teacher having bad connection moment or just disrupt the class in any way. So it really seems like everyone's coming together and acting respectfully in a circumstance in which they could kind of act out if they wanted to. Big shout out to the LST. The support staff have been extremely consistent and dedicated to getting information out to students and making resources available without it making us as students feel like our emails are just getting spammed. Everything's really concise and available. The CRCs, Ms. Polito and Fuentes, are constantly ready and there for seniors going through the college application process and have an extremely detailed and well-stocked Google Classroom page with loads of information and tutorials. I myself have been quite dependent on that, and I'm really grateful for how easy they've made it to access information and get questions answered, and my parents are really grateful for it as well. Now, students were asked to complete a survey asking questions regarding satisfaction levels and overall feelings towards e-learning in the semester so far. No one likes a really long survey, and that wasn't the case. I asked a few of my classmates how they felt about it, and nobody reported feeling overwhelmed with it or that it took too much time to complete. Sports are back in business. While this hasn't been new necessarily and contact days have been implemented for some time, things have been progressing and seasons are going strongly. Positivity seems to be running high with multiple wins seen from boys cross country, girls swim and dive, girls tennis, as well as boys and girls golf. One thing I wanted to touch on before I tied up is software and its place in e-learning. I know this might seem like an odd thing to bring up, but I really just wanted to extend a big thank you to the board for all the resources they've allocated towards facilitating our learning in terms of software. Most courses really just run off of a combination of Zoom and the Google Suite overall, but being in multiple music courses in the fine arts department, we're basically saved by programs like Upbeat, Soundtrap, Music First, Music Classroom, and many others which allow us to make music together and help the process of submitting and reviewing assignments really smooth. I'm going to hand it off to Kayla, and I actually have to head out. I have another time commitment. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Student representatives.
Thanks, Diego. Appreciate your comments.
Student representatives.
At VHHS, there are clubs that are underway or back in the building. Clubs such as the cycling club and frisbee golf are underway. Frisbee golf has had their first meeting at Adler Park in Libertyville on Wednesday afternoon. My brother, a freshman, explained to me that it was a lot of fun, made some new friends, and felt safe, and loved having to do something new and exciting. There are also some classes coming back to school, which is amazing and totally helps bring our community together while still being safe. For example, I'm taking lifeguarding this semester, which is so much fun and I'm learning a lot. Right now, we are going to Libertyville High School because our pool is still under construction. The whole class period, we were wearing masks besides when we were in the underwater. And it's also a great getaway from being in my house, and I can talk to people face to face other than my family.
Student representatives.
Back at high school, senior Bianca Zulo is in darkroom photography. She states it's pretty weird seeing everyone, but it's really nice to be able to see my teacher face to face, and she can explain everything. Some protocols we take include everyone is wearing a mask and no one is sitting right next to each other. There are only 9 people that go on Mondays, while the rest go on Thursdays.
Technical difficulties with audio on Zoom. Student representatives' audio is unheard.
Hey, Kayla, I think we lost you.
Can you guys still hear me?
Now we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Did you hear everything that I said before?
No, we missed the last, the next thing you told us, so.
I'll do it again. Okay. Sorry. Back at the high school, senior Bianca Zulo is in darkroom photography. She states it's pretty weird seeing everyone, but it's really nice to be able to see my teacher face to face because she can explain everything.
Student representatives.
Some protocols we take include that everyone is wearing a mask and no one is sitting right next to each other. And there are only 9 people that go on Mondays, while the rest go on Thursdays. Everyone gets hand sanitizer before class and a wipe to wipe down your table. I really like being able to see my teacher because it's so much easier to learn new things face to face when she can help you. Is that good now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Perfect. Another student, senior Naomi Hernandez, told me she loves it. I'm back in class with one of my favorite teachers and friends, since there's literally only 6 of us in AP Portfolio. It's so much fun and everyone's still wearing a mask and socially distanced, and it's nice to teach each other. The following information is from Ms. Schwartz. She virtually runs the Academic Resource Centers, or the ARC, the ARC, and manages students attending in-person classes at BHHS. She said in the past couple of weeks, we have seen a few students return to school to take part in some in-person classes. In order to facilitate their e-school needs, they have been utilizing the LMC as sort of a drop-in center. The students observe all social distancing guidelines, sitting at tables that are more than 6 feet apart, and using the provided sanitizing wipes to wipe down the surfaces before and after use. They also have access to hand sanitizer, and they all wear masks. She continued to speak about the ARC, Academic Resource Center, and saying it's off to a great start. This year, we have 107 students, volunteer tutors. So far in the last 3 weeks, we have sent 29 students directly into classes as rent tutors. They have also assisted in the freshman transition program.
Student representatives.
Sorry about that, and math classes. We've also had over 25 individual tutoring sessions, and these sessions are conducted via Zoom. In breakout rooms throughout the day before school and during office hours, students have met with teachers who are on duty in the ARC. In the upcoming weeks, we start to review sessions, help review materials in the neediest classes, such as Algebra 1 and Geometry. Construction update. The new classrooms are completed and ready for inspection that allows us to occupy them. The cafeteria is completed and students are eating in the areas that were a part of the old cafeteria. The new gym has a graffiti painted floor, will not be ready for several more weeks. Thanks to the board for committing to these important projects.
Student representatives.
Now on
The
to you.
SAT. Thank you. The SAT was held at BHHS on Wednesday, September 23rd, an asynchronous school day. Groups of students had different testing times in order to allow for social distancing when entering and exiting the building. Senior Kayla Rubin explained that her experience was great. She felt safe, welcomed, and it was overall a great experience. Although it wasn't fun wearing a mask for hours at a time, it was still nice to see everyone in our grade. A different point by VHS senior Neha, she felt it was dangerous to go back to school during this pandemic because she thought people would be irresponsible with wearing their mask. But then she saw that people were actually being responsible and didn't remove their mask when they were in the testing room, so she felt safe. Over 300 students successfully took the SAT at BHS last Wednesday. Special thanks and recognition to junior Aditya Sabaharwal, who showed extreme generosity. Aditya worked this summer giving tennis lessons to young children. He earned over $1,500 and decided that he would donate the money to charitable organizations. Aditya chose to donate $1,000 to the VHHS Cougars for Cougars initiative. These funds will be used to help VHHS families in need due to COVID-19 or other trying circumstances. We are so grateful for the kindness and generosity Aditya has displayed. In order to continue student activities at VHHS, clubs have been meeting virtually through scheduled Zoom meetings. Club advisors have utilized Google Classroom and Remind in order to connect and spread out information to club members. Clubs such as Voices in Prevention, JSA, Environmental Club, and Student Council have held successful Zoom meetings. Advisors and students have said that they're glad their clubs are able to connect and communicate. The Senior Class Student Council held a tagging event on Saturday, September 12th and Sunday the 13th. This event invited the senior class back into the school to spray paint their name on the concrete floor of the new West Gym. Students had to sign up for a time slot to come in and spray paint their name. These time slots worked to ensure that there weren't too many people so that we could all socially distance. Upon arriving, students were required to wear a mask, socially distance, and were given a construction hat. After spray painting their names, students set their spray paint bottle on a designated table. The bottles were then sanitized by volunteer student council members. On their way out of the building, Students Council provided the students with gelato as a tasty treat to end the event. This event was the first Student Council event of the year, hopefully paving the way for many more Student Council events and activities to come. Lastly, on Wednesday, September 23rd, VHHS virtually held the National Honor Society induction ceremony. This ceremony opened with a welcome from NHS President Keshav Trika and was followed by executive board members explaining the 4 pillars of NHS, which are scholarship, leadership, character, and service. The ceremony featured an inspirational speech by teacher Matthew Belito, who focused on the mental toughness characteristic that many NHS inductees carry. He also strived to emphasize the importance of receiving the honor to be in the National Honor Society. Next, our principal, Dr. G, congratulated the students and led in the National Honor Society pledge. To conclude the ceremony, led by Ms. Garcia, Ms. Gustomer, and Dr. Beagle, the inductees' names were called in order to officially induct them. And that concludes the student reports from LHS and VHHS for tonight.
Pat Grudy, President.
Okay, great job. You guys are just doing an absolutely fantastic job. And I'm sure you're busy, but I hope you can stay around at least through the superintendent's report as we continue to talk more about some of our opening strategies. So before I pass it on to Dr. Lee, I just want to say that as part of my president's report tonight, I want to acknowledge the extensive feedback we received over the past few weeks concerning the opening of our schools. And while the more vocal feedback has been received from those favoring the reopening of schools, there's also been significant and strong feedback from residents who have asked us for assurances that we will not open schools before it's safe and appropriate to do so. It's clear that we as communities remain deeply divided on this issue, and we must understand this is not a simple democratic issue where we vote and someone wins and someone loses. It's imperative that we all continue to work together collectively to develop and devise the solutions that will that will ensure the needs of our students and staff are met successfully, regardless of our personal position of what we think works best. So let me assure everyone the following. Number one, we remain committed to opening our schools as soon as it's safe to do so. And although we focused our most recent efforts on the rollout of our eSchool program, our staff, faculty, and administrators have continued to work tirelessly to slowly but safely return students to campus, and they will be sharing more details regarding our process and future plans for that later this evening. Second, let me reassure you that for those of us on this board, this is not an issue of politics. This board has been and continues to focus on making the decisions that are in the best interest of our students and our community based on the best available information, and we have every intention of continuing to do so. Third, we will continue to act with courage and resolve. Many have accused us of not having the courage to stand up to people like the teachers union in particular, and they've implied that our decision to go remote was unfavorably influenced by positions expressed by local and national unions. And let me, in the strongest possible terms, state that this has not been the case and will not be the case. At no time did our teachers demand that we go remote, and at no time have they made unreasonable demands that could not be accommodated regardless of which opening mode we chose to pursue. Our teachers and staff have worked with us collaboratively and creatively throughout this process, and they have done and continue to do an outstanding job of creating the best possible educational environment for our students under extremely challenging circumstances. Our teachers deserve this community's thanks and support, and I hope that if you see any of them, you will let them know so. Finally, going forward, we will continue to be challenged for the foreseeable future. We'll be working towards many changes, including continuing to slowly bring our students back to campus. To do this successfully, we need the full support of our families and our community, because the success or failure of those efforts will continue to require that we successfully mitigate the spread of the virus. This virus has not gone away, and there are plenty of examples throughout the country where places have relaxed their guard with adverse consequences. We simply cannot let this happen. Let there be no doubt that we will not be returning to business as usual for some time. But nevertheless, we have every intention of continuing our journey toward in-person learning as soon as possible. Everyone's commitment and positive attitude will be crucial to ensuring our success in all of these efforts. And I just want to thank everybody in advance for everything they continue to do to make our efforts successful. So with that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Lee for the superintendent's report.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you to the students again for your awesome.
Hey, Prentice, before we move on, it's Kevin. Doesn't Pat needs to talk about some other issue, I believe, as part of his president's report?
I think he's going to have me talk about that first.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
I think that's where that ended up, Kevin. But that was a good thank you. So before we started this evening, about 4 years ago, the board and I did what we both knew was going to be my last contract, which was a 5-year contract. This is year 4 of that contract. I talked with the board when we did that contract and said it was likely that I would probably go 3 years. We agreed to go 5 years to give both of us flexibility if the need came up at some point in the future during that contract. So about a year and a half ago, the board and I had a discussion way before we knew anything about COVID about me going into a 4th year of that 5-year contract, really to do 3 things. 1, to complete the construction of the major capital projects that we've all worked so hard on, and at some point this fall that will conclude. Secondly, to work with the district and building leadership teams, Rita and her leadership, on our district mission statement, our daring statement, to make sure that that was, fully anchored in and they had the support of the superintendent and the board as we move forward on that as a second thing. And then thirdly, just to ensure that the district leadership team, the building leadership teams, particularly Tom and John, had everything they needed to make the transition to a new superintendent in the future. So per my contract, I'm under obligation to let the board know on a year-by-year basis if I'm going to retire by September 1. On September 1, I submitted the following letter to the board. Dear Pat, Jim, Karen, Don, Lisa, Kevin, and Casey, I will turn 64 on May 13th, 2021, and with the end of the FY21 school year, I will have completed 41 very special years as an educator. With that said, and as we discussed a year or so ago, at the end of the FY21 school year, I will retire as the Community High School District 128 superintendent. It is among the highest honors of my life to lead this creative, innovative, and amazing school district. And it is simply time for the next generation of leaders, teachers, and support staff to take the district to the next level. It is also time to pursue the next journeys in my life, along with my beautiful wife, Phyllis, and my wonderful daughters, Sujin and Shayren, whatever that might entail and wherever that might take us. My career has encompassed virtually every position at the high school level: teacher and coach, department chair, dean, assistant principal, 3 high school principalships, associate superintendent, and finally, superintendent at the best high school district in the country. I loved each one of these roles in each district and high school that I worked in. Absolutely wonderful collective experiences and accomplishments. I have been blessed to pursue and enjoy a career that I've always seen as a mission to assist and ensure that students were always healthy and safe and grew and achieved at ever higher levels. And I am very proud of the collective work that we all did to passionately bring that mission to life in District 128. I can never adequately express my appreciation to former D128 Superintendent Dr. David Clough for his wisdom that guides me to this day, to former Board President Ann Landgraf and other board members, including Alex Deliapoli, Pat Grudy, Jan Foreman, Ellen Maurer, Marcia Oberreiter, and Judy Sugarman, who hired me as a brand new superintendent 12 years ago. Over the past 12 years, we have collectively moved D128 from a historically outstanding, regionally recognized school district to a district that has consistently ranked among the very best districts in the nation. Those distinctions came as the result of a total focus on and commitment to ensuring that our students were healthy and well, and that all students grew and achieved at higher levels. The results have been extraordinary. None of this happened by chance, and you and former school boards, current and former administrators, teachers and support staff, students and parents, and community members should be lauded for your collective focus on student well-being, growth, and achievement. It continues to make the difference. Special thanks and appreciation to Pat, for his gifted facilitation and consensus building leadership as board president. The boards during my tenure as superintendent, including the current board, have been outstanding. I have always respected and enjoyed the complex, deep discussions with the board on all matters of substance. And I want you to all know, as I move toward retirement, that this is an amazing and it's a very special place. And remember that we've done what we've done, built on really a line over time, which goes back to Dave Clough, which goes back to Don Gossett, which goes back to Walter Johnson. And so that trend line in this district has been, very, very important to our district and will continue to be so. And I will really, really miss working with you, every day. And so let me finish by saying, thanks to the supremely committed and gifted district and building leadership teams, teachers and support staff for doing what we do, how we do it, and how we continually improve it. With Bryant, Rita, Dan, Kelly, Mary, Mick, John, and Tom working with the new superintendent, the district will continue to be in great hands. Their collective wisdom, processing, and decision-making will ensure that D128 continues to build on the excellence of this wonderful district and our two amazing high schools. We have much work to complete together before the end of the FY21 school year. And no matter how challenging issues like the pandemic may be, I look forward to completing that work with you. And of course, I will assist and support the board as needed and requested to support the selection process and successful transition of the next superintendent at the best school district in the country, Community High School, District 128.
Pat Grudy, President.
Pat?
So let me just add a few words. First, this is one of those days we hoped would never come, but it always does, and it seems to have come sooner than we ever even imagined. But without a doubt, we've been very fortunate, I think, to have someone uniquely capable of leading this district. And over the years, Dr. Lee has just demonstrated incredible leadership capabilities. Not only that, he's demonstrated an unbelievable ability to recruit, retain, and develop additional leaders in our district. He's had an outstanding understanding of really what it takes for a high school district such as ours to succeed and grow. He's been incredibly effective at managing and meeting the needs of our very diverse stakeholders. And probably not known to many, he has an extensive network of contacts both locally and at the state level that have just proven invaluable to us as we've needed government cooperation or actions needed to support our district. So in a year where this board is challenged with many big decisions, there will be none larger than us filling these big shoes. So I think on behalf of everyone, I just want to say, thanks for all your years of service. You have been a great leader for us as board members to work with. And I can only hope that as we go forward over the next couple of months in the process that we kicked off earlier this evening, I can only hope that we can find somebody who has even a fraction of what you've shown us in this district over the last several years. So thank you for your commitment, your leadership, your service, and all that you've done. And, I certainly hope we have a great rest of this school year to send you off on a great note. So thanks, Brennan, for all that you've done.
Pat Grudy, President.
Anybody? Yeah.
Pat Grudy, President.
Anybody want to add any brief comments? Otherwise, we're going to keep going because we've got a long night. But okay. All right, we'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Pat, for those very nice comments. And again, thanks to this board, past boards, the administrators and the staff and our students. It's just been an amazing 15 years in this district by the end of this year, and an amazing 41-year career for me. So thank you very much. Very, very special. Okay, so next on our report tonight is we're going to do a little bit more celebrating before we get into good news. And we have 4 board members who have been recently recognized in the Illinois Association of School Board Master Board Member Program. And those members are Casey Rooney, Level 1 Master Board Member, Karen Lundstedt, Master 1 Board Member, and Lisa Hessel, Level 1 Master Board Member, and Jim Batson, at the highest level, Master Board Member, maintained over a period of time. Now, this is a special deal because you have to work at this as part of your board experience. And so I'm going to show you, it doesn't show up very well on the camera here, but this is a certificate that all 4 of our fellow board members received. And the board members earn points for doing the following things: for attending the joint annual conference, for the delegate assembly at the joint annual conference, division meetings, ISB governing meetings, serving as a division officer, Alliance Leadership Summit, and the joint annual commute panel review committee and resolutions committee. And so there are several levels in that process, and we just want to tell all of you we're very proud of you and thank you for your outstanding commitment. So good work. Yeah, for sure. Really good.
Prentice Lee Superintendent. Prentice Lee Superintendent.
All right, so some more good news. The District 1, following D128 seniors will named 2021 National Merit semifinalist. From LHS, Andrew Clark, Leah Klein, Jamie Nicholson, Desiga Namuthi. I'm going to probably kill this name. Nainer, Matthew Shinnick, Mary Kate Stone, Liam Tucker, John Wilcox, and Jonathan Zhang. From VHHS, Bradley Au, Lisa Bamer, Chantel Cordy, Nirajan Kilkarni, Arav Panda, Eric Song, and Ashley Ziegler. So congratulations to all of those outstanding students. Writing by 2 LHS students were recently published in a book called Queen Teen. Lauren Kern and Eva Ferenkrog contributed to the book, which focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on teenagers. LHS senior Pavan Acharya was selected to perform in the Illinois High School Theater Festival All-State Virtual Cabaret Showcase. The virtual performance will be held on November 19th and January 9th at 7 p.m. Some of Allison Malloy's AP portfolio artists and students in art exploration and drawing and painting at LHS contributed original artwork, pictured above, to be published in an activity book being printed to sell as a fundraiser for a new subdivision playground in Antioch. With a team of volunteers ready to build a newly designed playground, the subdivision needed to be covered. Hang on a second. With the team of volunteers ready, the subdivision needed to cover the cost of materials for the project. And selling these Halloween activity and coloring books this October, all proceeds will go toward constructing the new playground. Thank you to contributing volunteer student artists from the VHHS art program: Sasha Agafanova, Gabrielle De Leon, Claire Dornbush, Sophia Kim, Ming Ni, Christina Pappas, Jasmine Paulson, and Julia Stein. LHS Band Director Adam Gore was awarded the Outstanding Chicagoland Music Educator Award from Quinlan and Fabish Music Company. The awards have been presented annually since 1989. Nominations are accepted throughout the music education community and are voted on by the committee of all of the previous award recipients. Each year, 3 educators are selected in the elementary junior high division, and 3 are selected in the high school collegiate division. And in addition, an article by Gore and Scott Edgar of Lake Forest College Department of Music was published in Arts Education Policy Review, titled Local Level Implementation of Social Emotional Learning in Arts Education, Moving the Heart through the arts. And finally, Gwen Raleigh Shotwell, LHS graduate, 1982, was recently named a Times 100 Most Influential People of 2020. Shotwell is the president and chief operating officer of SpaceX. Congratulations to everyone. Next on the superintendent's report tonight is our monthly update on capital projects. So I'll turn that over to Mark and Dan, if Dan is going to add to that at all.
Mark Copeman, B&G.
Thank you, Prentice. An update on Vernon Hills. Our classroom edition, a lot of finishes are in. We received lab casework for science labs. So we're still waiting on some of the metal cabinets, but that casework is being installed. They're also working on air balancing of the HVAC systems in that area. We're working on the new piping for the HVAC, cleaning everything out, cleaning the pipes out, and getting ready for install the glycol fluid into the system, so we're up and ready for heat and air conditioning. In the cafeteria area, all the cafeteria staff received training on all the brand new equipment in the area. We are working on the air handler in there. It's up and running now for the for where the students eat, and as well as the servery where they will be picking up their food in the near future. And as you heard the students before, we are utilizing the space socially distanced for the kids that are in the school presently to eat their lunches. The carpeting around the school has been completed, except for one classroom that we did some additional work in, but the new carpeting looks fantastic. The gym and dance addition is moving along. The MEP work in the areas is still ongoing. As you see on the outside, a lot of the brick and stone is up. Windows are going in, and we actually have, by the end of last week, the basketball backboards were all installed on the ceilings. So moving forward onto the VHS softball infield, the project started. We're moving along at a great pace, prepping the area for the installation of the turf. The initial main drainage is installed. Grading has been done. They'll be pouring concrete tomorrow for a curb and setting up, continue to set up the rest of the drainage and grading for the installation of the turf second or third week in October. And that concludes my report on the capital projects.
Okay, any questions for Mark?
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, Pat, I'm going to kind of go to other here for a minute because I just want to make sure that we let the public know, just jumping back to my retirement for just a second. So Pat and the board are working with two consultants, which will include Dave Clough, the former superintendent, District 128, and Dr. Linda Yankee, who's the retired superintendent from New Trier High School District. And so there'll be more information coming around to the community and to our staff and parents and students regarding that process, which will start pretty quickly moving forward. And the board has, spent some time in consideration of that and has already set up on the dates. And Pat, I'm sorry, I should have reminded you this before. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Pat Grudy, President.
No, other than to just reiterate for the public that that process will include getting feedback from the public, not only via survey, but also via focus group. So again, there will be more information coming on that shortly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Last thing from superintendent's report tonight. and then we'll jump back to school reopening. So we'll do FOIA requests, and then we'll come back to the school reopening discussion. So we had 3 FOIA requests this month. And so as we're required to do, I'll read those into the record. First one was a commercial FOIA request received on 7/28. The response deadline was 8/26. Requester was Heidi Holloway from Citywide Building Maintenance Incorporated in Itasca. The information requesting the previous bid proposal results for the custodial services bid. Results need to specify bidder's name and prices, requesting the current monthly and annual costs, requesting a copy of the current custodial contract. Follow-up was done by Dan Stanley and Rose DeSico in the business office. The request was fulfilled and the response was sent on 8/26. Second FOIA request received 9/4. Response deadline was 9/14. Requester was Jeff Creel in Libertyville, Illinois. Information requested: as a resident of Libertyville and a parent of an LHS student, I'd like to know the salary of every LHS teacher from 2020 to 2021 school year. In addition, I'd like the amount of each coach would be scheduled to earn in addition to their normal salary. Follow-up was done by Brian Kelly. The request was fulfilled and the response was sent on 9/14. The third and final request this month was a commercial FOIA request. It was received on 9/11 and the response deadline was 10/12. The requester was Preston Deddy from Peoria, Illinois. Requested information was bid results and tabulations or award for the September 8th, 2020 Community High School District 128 Softball Field Improvements Project at Vernon Hills High School in Lake County. STR project number 20014. Follow-up was done by Dan Stanley and Rose DeSico, and the request was fulfilled and the response was sent on 9/23. So those are our FOIA requests. Okay, so we're going to shift to number 2 on the superintendent's report tonight. And just echoing, I think Pat did a great summary on behalf of the board and the administration in the district. But as the community will note, and anybody that's watching tonight, Pat and I sent out a joint message to all of our parents and students and staff Friday afternoon. And part of that letter was talking about what are next steps in terms of, possible decision making to bring more students in to the fold. So before we actually start to talk about framework components and a timeline, and really just set the stage for the meeting that's going to come, the working meeting that's going to come next Monday, part of what we said to the board when we went through kind of the disaggregation process of this over the summer was once the decision was made to start in remote learning, is that we were committed to start to bring smaller groups of students back in. And initially we talked about bringing smaller groups of special education students in. We were already in the process of bringing athletes in to look at really creating some opportunities for our student activities and our other co and extracurricular activities. So we started that process a couple of weeks ago with a number of students coming back to campus for a number of reasons. So Tom and John have been good enough, along with their teams, to do some quantification and just give you an idea of what that looks like. So before we talk a little further about the process, and as we do this, I want to underscore that, again, we had a conversation, made a recommendation to the board made a decision. We've taken some further steps and we've done exactly what we said we were going to do along the way. So, and that's been a very transparent process for us. So Bryant, if you can pull that doc up for us, that comparative document. And then Tom and John, I would ask you both to unmic a little bit and just kind of walk the board and the community through what we're seeing here. We're a little bit more familiar with this because we're seeing it on a daily basis and working with you. So I'll turn it over to Tom and John for the moment.
John Guliao, Principal.
Yeah, thanks, Prentice. Tom, you and I can go back and forth on this. This is simply as Prentice said, it's a summary of the numbers of students that we have had in or will have in by the end of this week. I'll say that these numbers are our best projections. Some of these might be a touch off, as some of the asterisks may show there as well. But we start with academic supports. So at both high schools, we are serving a pretty significant portion of our special services department, many of them coming back this week. At our place, we will have some support of our English language learners, hopefully in this week, but maybe, maybe by the end of the next week as well. And then we're supporting students through our LST, as you heard Diego Corrales, one of our student board reps, mentioned earlier today. Tom, why don't you take the academic
Tom
enrichment?
Coolentest principal.
Yeah, so while academic support is critical, we're trying to identify students who really will benefit from some added support to help with their e-learning. We also want to look to academic enrichment of classes. Specifically, we started with classes that we believe, yes, they are being done in eSchool, but that have some specialized skills or equipment that can't be replicated through a remote environment. And so one thing that's important for the board to understand is John and I, the staff at Vernon Hills and the staff at Libertyville, are in constant consultation about this, so that we're talking with one another about which of our student groups we want to bring in. And then we work with our district office to coordinate that. And that's why you see such synchronicity between the two schools. We are working with our driver's ed students for the behind the wheel portion, where they are driving and getting their driving hours. We have our lifeguarding students, as our board reps talked about, coming in and doing some of the specific skills that they can't replicate in eSchool. Glass art and darkroom, AP studio art, autos and woods, and gourmet foods are all coming in, as are many of our ensemble groups for orchestra and choir and band. Those groups are getting started. There's a lot more organization and equipment that we need to supply, but we are making plans to bring in some of those music ensembles as well. I'll take athletics, John, and then I'll let you go back to fine arts. But as the board reps talked about, we have both in-season sports happening, and then we have what are our out-of-season contact days. And at Libertyville High School, we have a school population of approximately 1,960 students this year. And right now we have approximately 1,350 students who are coming to school for athletics at least once a week, up to 5 or 6 times a week to participate. And you see at Vernon Hills, approximately 850 students out of their school population coming in. This is before school and after school, in the early evenings and on weekends, as we spread our teams out and utilize all of our fields and our facilities.
And to continue along those lines, again, we understand just the overwhelming importance of these extracurriculars to the kind of social emotional experience and health of our students. And so as Tom talked about athletics, we also have spent considerable time working with our fine and performing arts department, as well as our 2 outstanding activities directors, to increase the numbers of kids that are coming outside of school hours. So the fine arts that you see there, again, are outside of school hours. The marching band and drum line at LHS and its fall play, which you heard about in their board report. At our place, our chamber choir is coming in at after school hours at night into our auditorium, spaced especially far away, more than the 6 feet. And then our crew has been in with our fall play as our talented actors and actresses are doing it remotely. Our crew is in working on sets. We also have had clubs and activities Like I said, and you can read through those, I won't read through all of them, but we continue to increase many of those. We've been fortunate to have a good spell of nice weather, so most of those have been outside clubs and activities, but we are beginning to change in the weather, and in some of our groups, for example, we're having our Black Student Union in this next week to do a special project inside, so we'll have them inside in a safe environment, practicing all the health protocols, but you can see how those numbers are growing by the week. Miscellaneous, Tom?
Yeah, so, while we're doing all of this, our staff and our teams are monitoring very, very closely how these events are going, the success, and what equipment, what supplies, what procedures we need. The SAT exam was a great learning experience for both Vernon Hills and Libertyville because we brought in an entire class of students. At Libertyville, we had a little trouble with the front entrance moving as quickly as we would have liked. And that taught us some lessons about when we start bringing even larger groups of students back, some of the revisions that we need to make. And then we were both very proud that so many of our seniors showed up to take that test. And we also were very proud of our senior leaders and our junior leaders who came in to do our freshman orientation. Both schools were able to bring in our freshmen, even though it was just for a day and kind of a half day to kind of get familiar with the school. That was something we were able to do. And while all of this is going on, we are in the process of adding more safety equipment, revising, as I said, some of the procedures and policies that we have, so that when the day comes when we believe it's safe to bring back even larger numbers of students, the building will be ready. I thought it was very surprising, and I know John would say the same. Depending on how you count this at Libertyville High School, we think, we've got close to 3/4 of our students connected and attending school events at least once a week in some way, shape, or form, whether that's in-person instruction during the school day or an after-school club activity, extracurricular, or athletic event. And I think the numbers are pretty much the same over at Vernon Hills as well. So this is clearly not all students back in school on a daily basis, but it is a testament to our staff of how hard they're working to find ways to stay connected with students and to bring students in for some of the things we can do safely while providing a healthy environment.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
Excuse me, I meant to say John and Tom. Do you want to, since we are having more students around the building, in the building, do you two want to talk about some of the differences over the last week or two, just kind of monitoring that and things that we've done to ensure that, students are they're healthy and safe when they come here, but while they're in the building that we're also doing social distancing and those just some of the challenges that go with that. Tom, do you want to start? And John, maybe we'll kick it to you.
Sure. It's joyous to have the kids back with us, and it warms all of our hearts, and everybody's very happy, and the kids are. But then there's also a sadness because, like, for example, when our kids have lunch with us, we have about 30 special service students that have lunch with us at Libertyville and Vernon Hills. And at Libertyville, they have to sit at their own table. They have, that's the only time during the day when they can take their mask off to eat. But they can't sit at tables with other students. When they're in their classrooms, we've taken out a lot of the furniture and have just the desks. All students are assigned a desk, and all the desks are facing one direction. They're spread out, so the kids can't really talk to their other classmates too easily because they're spread apart. They're wearing masks. In many of the classrooms, we've installed plexiglass around the teacher's desk area or in different kind of areas of the room to make sure that obviously our staff is safe. That's not in all of our classrooms, but in some. And then, we have to be very, very careful about students in the hallway when they use the washrooms and when we're having passing periods, that kids are not congregating and spending time together in groups. John, do you want to pick it up from there?
John Yao, principal.
Yeah, I tell you, I have been probably most impressed with students and their willingness to comply, I guess might be the best word, with what it is we're asking them to do. It is not comfortable, as I think some of our board reports stated, to be wearing masks for hours at a time. Yet we're asking the basketball team to wear a mask the entire practice. I had a student, one time I had a student walk out of a practice, and when he walked out of the gym, he took his mask off because he felt like I've had this, I could see it in his eyes. I've had this mask, I'm leaving the gym, I can take it off. And I just kind of pulled him aside, hey, can you just leave that on until you get out of the building? And he pulled it out of his pocket and twisted it, and the water just poured out of his mask. And then he put it on, and I apologized and said, man, I get it. I'm sorry. But this is a way for us to stay safe and to prove to the community that we're doing the best we can. And so I've just been really impressed with students. But I also have noticed just their propensity to group together. And like Tom said, I think the most difficult time for us is when we get them in the building, they're in the hallways and they're headed to their spot, because their natural inclination is to do it shoulder to shoulder with their buddy walking down the hallway. And there's nothing wrong with that, but our goal is to try to keep them separate. And I just need you to know as a board, it's almost impossible to do that with 60 kids in the building. I'm just telling you, unless you have an adult at every 10-foot marker, it's almost impossible to do it. And so to think about adding, multiples of that number into the hallways, there's just a reality about the difficulty of keeping, kids apart. And we have to be honest about that. We have to understand that. We're doing our best. The kids are complying with PPE, staff's complying with PPE. We're doing a great job cleaning, Mark and his crew, but there are some things that are just flat naturally difficult to do. And clearly the social distancing thing in kind of open spaces, hallways as we move about is quite difficult. So I just want to be honest about that.
I also think, John, and I know you would second this,
Tom Coolentest, principal.
We're very impressed with our staff in how serious and sincere and diligent they're being in taking the health and safety of our kids so seriously. I think, sometimes it's said in the community, well, perhaps people would say, well, the teachers are concerned about themselves. But what I see is our staff being so concerned about our students' health and never wanting to be in a situation where they're responsible for a child getting sick. And so they, are really checking their rooms. They're checking their procedures. They're making sure that all the students are okay and taking, the right steps. But then the staff is also really focused on our students' emotional health and wellness too. And the idea of, how can I support our students and help them feel like they can be comfortable here at school when we have all these new rules in place and the kids can't be quite as free as they once were to move around the building and to communicate with friends and with staff in the way that they're accustomed to. So it's new for all of us, and we certainly haven't been perfect out of the gate. We've made some little mistakes here and there, but what we're doing is we're using these small amounts of students that are in to learn and to build our skills and to kind of grow our understanding for the ways that we can operate in this new world. And, I'm just very, very proud of, like John said, of our students, but also our staff for the way that they're tackling this challenge.
Pat Grudy, president.
So John and Tom, just two quick questions. So one, how are kids getting to these activities on campus? Are they providing their own transportation, or are we actually providing some for them at this
point? John Yao, principal.
Good question. Both. We are actively. So let me go back. So let's say a glass art class is going to start. What we do is we survey the families and we ask first, are you interested in doing it, right? Because it is voluntary. We're not compelling students to come back. So a family will say, yes, I'd like my child to come. And then we say, and how can you get your child to school? Can you do it personally, either by car or by walking or by bicycle? Or would you need us to provide transportation? And for the families that do need us to provide transportation, we bus them to school. And the way that we do it is we do it in morning and afternoon sessions. So let's say glass art is second period, but a kid needs busing transportation. We pick that student up before first hour. So they come to school for first hour. They sit in our place up in our library. Could be different at Tom's place. They're monitored by one of our school personnel as they do their e-school learning first hour. Then the bell rings, then they move to their glass art second hour. And then after second hour, that block, then they jump back in a bus, head home during that lunch break, and they do their third and fourth periods of that orange day. So that's a typical kind of operating procedure. And then we do offer busing for after school activities as well, although that's been not as popular, not as needed. So.
Okay, great. And then the second real quick question. So like for Woods and Auto and courses like that, are all the kids that are enrolled in those courses able to attend the on-campus part? I guess if they want to.
Tom Coolentest, principal.
Yeah, we send once we determine a class can come on campus, we send the families a survey where we ask, do they want to attend? All of these classes are optional. So, and there is no penalty or consequences to a child who is either unable or doesn't feel comfortable attending on-site classes. And we should say, too, that what normally happens in these situations is we divide the classes in half. And so only half the kids from each class come at a given time. So, for example, if glass might have 20 students in it, 10 might come on Monday and 10 would come on Thursday. So that keeps the numbers much smaller. And then we ask if the students need to attend a study hall and if they need transportation. And if we have to provide lunch. And so then we go and we set up all of those logistics and make sure that we have all of that in place. And then we start bringing the students in. Okay. I also, forgive me because I want to clarify something. I misspoke earlier. When you were asking me about the preparation we were making for students, I said we were putting plexiglass in the classrooms. That's inaccurate. What I meant to say was we're putting classrooms or plexiglass in the offices where we have a lot of secretaries and things who are stationary behind their desks all day. We have not established plexiglass barriers in any classrooms at this point, but we have established those in a lot of the common or like office spaces that teachers and secretaries use.
Kevin Huber, School Board.
Hey, Tom and John, have you guys submitted a list to administration of what exactly you need to make sure your buildings are good to go when we start to try to get more kids back in? That plexiglass comment's very concerning to me. I mean, I would have thought that would have been addressed earlier on. Technology, we got to make sure that the kids who choose remote, who are very unsure about coming back, they get the same educational experience. I think that's a big issue. Have you guys really worked with our district office to make sure you're getting what you need to make sure at that point in time, whenever that may be, that we can start getting more kids into your buildings for educational purposes?
John Giuliao, principal.
Yeah, absolutely. Kev, I mean, we're in contact with them nonstop. I think, in terms of some of the supplies, like the plastic, separating barriers, some of that stuff just came in. So now we're re-upping some of those orders and increasing some of that in anticipation. We talked this morning again about technology and the idea of, perhaps needing to do some streaming or some type of videoing in the future. But all of those things we continue to talk about and ask for, and they've been great about, filling our needs.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
And I think on plexiglass, there are some teachers that may not want plexiglass shields. in their classrooms. So I think Mark, you can speak to this, and Dan, much better than I can. Plus you're younger and you have better memories, as I've established earlier tonight by revealing my age. Can you talk a little bit, Mark? I know plexiglass was like super duper hard to find, and we ended up getting some at the beginning before anybody else got it. Where are we at with plexiglass right now?
Mark Copeman, B&G.
Okay, we were able to find a supplier locally in Chicago for our first round of plexiglass. We were able to get what they had in stock. And since then, we placed a significantly larger order as we were working to customize the different areas and coverage through the school. In the beginning, you couldn't get plexiglass, so we were looking at alternate routes with other dividers to set it on countertops and stuff. But then with the realization that some of these spaces are wide open and people actually, are close in contact, the person behind the desk is sitting there all day long, that they're walking by within a 6-foot distance. So we needed to do some additional change in our initial game plan and provide additional coverage. So presently we have a good stock, and we are working on the customization.
Tom Coolentest, principal.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say too that the other thing that with all of this, we're constantly kind of refining and saying, this is what we need. I feel very good about the fact that whenever we ask for something, we're not told no. So if anything, we're ordering it. We just wait for it to come in. But we also, Mark and his team have been at Libertyville High School investigating all of our mechanicals, making sure that everything is operating not just at the level of a pre-COVID time, but operating with compliance to the ever-changing guidelines that are coming out for best practices with a COVID era. And so, frequently in our building, checking everything out, communicating with me to say, we can't use this space right now because we don't feel comfortable that it's operating at the level we want it to operate in. We've got to, make these fixes before we can bring students or staff into there. So it's a very dynamic kind of back and forth process.
Prentice Lee, superintendent.
Okay, so we wanted to take a few minutes on that tonight because we've done a lot of work with bringing students back in different categories, and so that's a good. Thanks to Tom and John and their teams for updating that, because it's a good visual and then a good conversation about, part of that next step forward. And, Kevin raised a real good question, and we, probably need to continue to talk about this publicly, but all of the conversations, all the work we've done has been integrated work with all of us as part of that process. So Tom talked about the dynamic nature of that, but in our meetings together, they're working with us at district office, whether it's Mick and technology or it's Mark and Dan with other things that might be needed. Those discussions are ongoing, like I think John said, multiple times a day, many times, about how we need to adjust. But the other important thing that either Tom or John or maybe both of them said tonight is that by beginning to bring students back into the building, we can actually learn from those experiences. And you heard Tom and John reflect a little bit tonight on, we learned this, as a result of that. We learned this as a result of that. And those learnings are, very informative as we continue to process moving forward. So, Brian, could you put the frameworks and timeline up? So I just want to take a few minutes and reiterate a couple of things that, looking for Bryant here. Okay.
Prentice Lee, superintendent.
Oop, I think I sent that to you, Bryant. Oh, you're in. Okay.
Prentice Lee, superintendent.
Okay, thanks. Those of you that read the letter that Pat and I sent on Friday will be familiar with this. But next Monday, October 5th, the board, the district leadership team, which will include Tom and John, and most likely one or two more administrators from the buildings. We'll have what we call one of our normal working meetings at a committee of the whole meeting. And so at that meeting, we're actually going to be digging into the framework components that will inform the board on, potential next round decision making in terms of bringing students back. So a couple of things before we go into this. I think Pat mentioned earlier in his comments, and I will tell you too, that I've received more than a few emails from people that are telling me that local high schools are already back in. I want to tell you that I'm meeting regularly, Zooming with superintendents in the area, and particularly once a week with the superintendents in our very immediate area here. And here's kind of where we sit right now. Stevenson has recommitted to go remote till the end of first semester. Mundelein, almost the same place in terms of decision making with us. Warren to the north, right on the same track of looking at, hey, if we're going to bring kids back in, it's probably going to be toward, the second week in November. And Lake Forest, at least at the high school, is still working through some issues in staffing in their particular district to actually get up and running. So as you look around the Chicago area, there are schools beginning to take steps forward. So the planning for that is important, of course, but at the end of the day, it's to have the plan that's going to work for that district. As you will recall this summer, there were several school districts in the area that had, plans done, and then a couple of weeks later, had to flip and start all over again. So the purpose of kind of patiently going through the process and weighing where we're at is to ensure that when we get to the point of decision making, that we're ready actually to be able to implement that, and that's not going to change as a result of another dynamic. So on the framework components, here are the things that the board and the administration will be talking about together. The relevant metrics. So a number of people have referenced the metrics, and just make the comment up front that when we made the decision to go to remote in the summer, the metrics were good, but we didn't have trend data, as Pat would point out yet. And at least the trend data is somewhat, Pat, if I'm not scientifically stating this correct, but it's flat. It's relatively flat in the area. And so, for example, that is one that check the box. We're good. On diagnostic testing, we'll have a discussion with the board. Do we think diagnostic testing is a precursor to us to be able to return to school? I think most of the board would probably say that would be wonderful and it would be really good if we could do that. That testing is not available right now. So if it's not available, does that have an impact on our decision making to potentially move forward and bring more kids back? The answer to that, maybe no, for example. So that's off the list. Contact tracing. So we'll be reaching out to Lake County Health Department over the next few days. And as so more districts in Lake County high schools, I'm our reference point, as more high schools begin to go back in Lake County in early November, let's say through mid-November, on a timeline, we're all kind of in that window in terms of what people are thinking. How is Lake County Health Department positioned to do the contact tracing once we bring larger number of people, larger number of folks back together in buildings? Because we know we will have more people exposed. They may not get it from school, but they may bring it in from outside of school, and then other people are exposed. So if we get an event like up in Kenosha, where a couple of kids were COVID-19 positive and they had to quarantine, a couple of hundred kids, how is Lake County positioned to do the contact tracing on that, or what would our role have to be in the contact tracing? Health and safety. John and Tom have talked about social distancing. And again, social distancing is still a guideline from the state at 6 feet or more. And so that, gets into several conversations about how do we, create that environment? How do we continue to message that? How do we continue to encourage kids and staff to be part of that process. PPE, you've heard us talk about that for a number of months, which for us also includes the purchase and installation of high-tech temperature scanners coming in the building, which will be helpful when we start to bring kids back. Daily protocols. What do our daily protocols look like in the buildings? And, what's the B&G staff's cleaning protocols? So these are just a few examples under health and safety.
Hey, Prentice, before we move on a couple. So
Sure.
I throw a shout out to Pat on diagnostic testing. And I think the board knows about, don't know if the community knows how hard he has been working with a local huge company. Before the federal government got a hold of the test, we were well positioned to do some great things. Unfortunately, the federal government's got a hold of these tests, and now we are trying to work a little bit different magic there. But we have to acknowledge there are other diagnostic tests out there that may not be rapid tests, but that may be able to fit the bill there. My bigger question to you, though, is I have had, well, I will say almost every attorney come up to me who's in the community and saying, why do you say the social distancing has to be 6 feet? That's a recommendation. Everything we've and again, it's not just been one attorney, it's every attorney. And they may have a hidden agenda, of course, right? I mean, they may be saying that that's a recommendation. That is not a mandate. And if you're wearing a mask, it can be less. And I'm not smart enough to do that interpretation, but I have to rely upon the lawyers. Can you kind of address that for at least the board on that? Again, we know best practice is 6 feet, right? But is it mandated by the Department of Public Health?
It's Kevin, the way they frame the guidelines is they're all guidelines. It doesn't say you must do this, you will do this. If it's positioned as a guideline, then we have a requirement to follow that. Now, as you recall in the summer, when we first had our 50 people on a bus, 50 people in a classroom, we can open school, and we all got real excited, including Tom and John, by the way, when we initially had that conversation. The guidelines were 3 to 6 feet and, when possible. So as that narrative continued throughout the summer, then the narrative changed to, the guideline is 6 feet. That's what you really need. That's what you really need to keep. And the local health departments, for example, Lake County, has told us, no, it's really 6 feet. It's not 3 to 6 feet, and when you can do it. So that modified over a period of time. And our connection, I think, as most of the board knows, because we've got liability on the list, again, just so, we have an awareness. But none of the school districts in Illinois have liability insurance because pandemic is not covered. It doesn't matter who your carrier is. We actually went out, Kevin, as you will recall, we tried to go out in the private marketplace and buy it, see what it is. You can't buy it. Nobody will sell it to you at any price. And so under liability in this state, because we are a government agency, there is a higher standard, a higher burden of proof for liability. And it has to be wanton neglect, if you will. I'm not using the correct legal term. And as our counsel has explained to us, that what that means is that we have to follow the guidelines that are provided by the agencies that govern us. If we fail to do that, then that higher burden of proof, it no longer exists in terms of doing that. So it's a knowledge point, and we are bringing kids back to school right now because the board, of course, we talked about this summer, and the board was aware of that. But it's also wrapped up into that conversation. So that 3 to 6 foot that we started out is the guideline really is 6 foot, and that's been doubled down on by what we've been told by the Lake County Health Department. So,
hey, Prentice, do you mind? Can I add something to that?
Please,
just so to be very, very clear, ISB has consistently and repeatedly said that social distancing 6 feet required where possible. It's never been a guideline. It's never been a suggestion. It's been they must social distance, must be observed as much as possible, and then it's the 6 feet. They've been pretty clear in their their guidance to us, which is it's their rules to us that says we have to follow. And even in their clarification documents, when they've clarified, no, we really mean the 6 feet distance has to be maintained at all times where possible. And they're acknowledging that there's places where it's not possible, like on a school bus, and they've acknowledged and they've said you don't have to maintain social distancing on a school bus because you can put 50 kids in. But it is clear that the social distancing is required where possible.
Yeah, I think the two things I'll add to that, Kevin. One, the technical data does support. I mean, 6 wasn't some random number they all came up with. If you study what happens when a person sneezes and how far the droplets go, not always, but in most cases, it's within a 6 foot range. But the thing that I think does mitigate that a lot is wearing a mask. So, for example, if I'm on a school bus, I can pretty easily wear a mask. If I'm even in the hallway, I can wear a mask. I think the challenge, of course, is when I'm sitting at a lunch table, I'm not going to wear my mask because I'm obviously going to eat. So that's where we really need to make sure we get to 6 feet, because they're going to be sitting down, without a mask for an extended period I'll define as greater than 15 minutes. But, to your point, I think if you look at all of these framework components, I mean, I want to be clear because there's some people that think that we're not going back just because of the liability. We've never said that. That's not the case.
Correct.
There's not any single thing on here that's, I'll call it a deal killer, okay? But if you look at this list, I mean,
Pat Grudy, President.
Our ability to accomplish successfully each one of these things, each one of them further reduces the risk of us having any kind of outbreak, okay? So yes, the metrics have all, trended positive. They're relatively stable. By any stretch, they're in the, call it, hybrid range of what's being recommended. If we can do the diagnostic testing, as we've talked about, whether it's once a week or once every 2 weeks, that significantly reduces the likelihood of us having an issue. Maybe that puts us in a position where there is some ability to relax social distancing. I don't know. Okay, I wouldn't recommend that. But I mean, that's the kind of conversation we could have if we know we're screening our population and further reducing the risk that there are spreaders in that population. We can certainly have that conversation. But there's good scientific evidence that supports the 6 feet. I'll look up some of those studies and try to send them out to you.
Pat Grudy, President.
Yeah,
and again, I go back to my my previous work at Abbott. I'll tell you what, the FDA has a whole lot of so-called guidelines. All right, well, let me tell you what happens when you apply to get approval for a product. A guideline isn't really a formal legal requirement until you don't meet it. I guarantee you don't get approval if you don't meet the guidelines.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
So I think the follow-up here is the design of kind of listing the components out and talking not only with the board, but with the community about what's involved in that decision-making is all of these pieces are, and Pat, you're right, not maybe a single one is not a deal killer, or maybe even 2 or 3 or 4, not necessarily a deal killer. But these are the things that we have to work our way through as we're looking to potentially bring kids back in some larger number, whatever that is, 25%, what is it? What does that look like? So when you look at staffing, for example, we will have some adult staff that will not be able to come back to school for medical reasons, but they may be able to teach from home, right? So, some of those students that we bring back, their teacher may be teaching them from home while they're in school for a period during the day. And that's part of the struggle some school districts are having with a higher percentage of staff members who are medically, excused and should not and cannot be in school. So where are we positioned in staffing? How will we handle that? That's part of the discussion that we'll have. Technology, I think Kevin mentioned, Kevin, that was you that mentioned it earlier. Mick Torres, our technology director, and I have several conversations over the last few days. So if we pivot in transition and we bring some kids back and we have some teachers teaching from home and some students learning from home while their teachers are in school, how are we positioned on technology with that? And Mick will be at the meeting with us. Schedule possibilities. So after we have some conversation about a number that we would feel comfortable being able to manage, within the school. So what are schedule possibilities? Well, we looked at one hybrid this summer, but depending on the number of students that we bring back, instead of an AB schedule, it could be an ABC, ABCD schedule. And there's also a kind of a modified block schedule that we could do depending on the numbers of students. So what does that look like? We'll have some of the discussions that we had this summer. Feeding students in lunch, again, depending on what schedule you use. Do we bring kids in and then, they go home and eat lunch and the next group comes in, they eat lunch and then come in? Or are we having kids here all day and then what does feeding them lunch look like? Impact bargaining, again, it's certainly not a deal killer, but part of this is we've had an ongoing conversation with the union since the middle of July on impact bargaining issues on various ways of bringing students and staff back to school. And we would need to continue whatever needed to be finished there. And then liability, again, not a deal killer, but something that, I would have an obligation as your superintendent to make sure you as a board were aware of. Not a deal killer in terms of bringing people back. So as we work through these on Monday night, we'll have all the people at the table that need to be there, understanding that the metrics were good in the summer, right? And we were looking for trend data. We were looking to be able to social distance. And the metrics are pretty good in Libertyville and Vernon Hills right now. So, move down the list in terms of what we're doing. So the projected timeline that we have here.
Yes, before you move on. So question on this. So one of I think the big concerns that I have is that a lot of these framework components haven't really changed or deviated from July, meaning, and we know a little bit more about diagnostic testing. That's great. Same, a little bit more with contact tracing. But the social distancing requirement, the PPE, the daily protocols, the cleaning, the staffing was always going to be an issue for our older staff, obviously. The technology, the schedule possibilities, feeding, all those things really haven't changed since July. And now we're at, end of September. So why haven't we kind of moved on those? And again, I kind of know why, because I know what you've been doing, because I've spent a lot of time with you doing it. But I think that's that's where some of this angst in the community, I believe, is coming from. That, okay, you have all this framework, guys, but we don't see anything. But so can you kind of address that for us, please?
Prentice Lee,
Well,
Superintendent.
sure. We've been working since, as Kevin, as you're aware, we've been working since July on all of these pieces. And so we're at a point now, I think Pat has talked about in August and September, the focus was on remote learning. Okay, we told you it was going to be vibrant, it was going to be robust, it was going to be challenging. And what you've heard tonight from the kids that are in the classes it is all that. Are there things we can continue to adapt and change and adjust in the surveying that we've done with students? And by the way, we're going to be surveying parents and staff members as well, knowing that we may, whatever decision is made here, that we may have to pivot back to remote sometime in the future. We'll certainly do that. But I think we're at the point, we are, and you are, as a board representative of the community, we're at the point to now make a decision of where we go. And there's a difference between, do we bring 50% of the kids back or 25%? And every one of those things is going to be a result of that decision. What we do is incredibly different. If you say, no, we're going to tell you you're bringing 50% of the kids back, right? That is a much different conversation on health and safety than having 25% of the kids in the building. I mean, it's totally different. It's totally different staffing wise, maybe different technology wise. And feeding 25% of the students is a lot different than feeding 1,000 kids, half of that. So we've evolved to the point, after getting school open, working with you working with us, vice versa, that we're at the point to decide what's the next step. We've successfully brought, as you've heard tonight, larger number of students back into the building, and we've learned some things from that. So Monday night, if I can just kind of quick go on a timeline, Monday night, the work meeting would be doing what we do best, and that is having that deeper conversation about those things, talking about, well, if we were going to bring kids back, how many kids would we bring back into the building at any one time? And then, and Kevin, you're right. Some of these components are an easy click off the list, but it's important that we all understand that they're all on the list, right? So we move it off. This is done. It's taken care of, or it's not relevant now. So Monday night will be, kind of a classic District 128 Board Administration working meeting, where we work through this together. We perhaps could be at a place by the end of the meeting that, we have some sense of where we're headed. Just knowing that you may raise some questions and we may raise some questions that need some additional answers that nobody's thought of yet, then, we put the next Monday on there. If I can roll up. Brian, can you roll that up for me a little bit?
Prentice Lee Superintendent.
I forgot, it's not my screen. And then Monday, October 12th at the PNP meeting, to have an opportunity to do any, final review of questions. Let me give you a good example of adjustment. So the first time we talked with the board this summer, of the 9-ish hours of meetings over 2 weeks that we had leading up to a decision, the board gave us some feedback that, was beneficial and we thought was very helpful on the schedules and, Wednesday day and what that might look like. And so, as you recall, the next week when we came back to the regular board member meeting, we incorporated that feedback, right? And I think we all felt better about that at that time. How we handled Wednesday, for example, was a good example of that. And that feedback allowed us to come back the next week and say, okay, we've incorporated that feedback. How do you like this? Does that reflect what we talked about, right? Moving forward. So Monday, October 12th gives us a backup. But I do want to say this, not precluding a final decision that the board would actually have to make, a decision, and that decision range could be, we're going to come back, end of October, early November, kind of on a timeline like everybody else is to get ready to do that. But the other extreme of the decision would be, well, we've looked at this and we think we need to continue in a remote for a while longer. So I don't want to preclude that decision because I don't know how all 7 of you feel about that individually. And, that at least has to be, a possibility, moving forward. So if you look at, if we come back in a hybrid, and that hybrid is less than 50% of the kids at any given time, then that has instructional implications. So, we're going to be working on what those instructional implications may be. It's different than it is at 50%, as Rita would point out, moving that forward. So, Kevin, really to your point, everyone's evolved, that we are looking forward, that the metrics are solid, and we have had some success bringing kids back in the building in some larger numbers. And we, as many of the districts that are just like us around us, we're at the point to have that deeper dive discussion and then to, have a conversation with you about what you want to do.
So can I ask a question? And I don't know, Rita, or whoever wants to chime in on this. The deeper dive discussion is likely to center around whatever the remaining options are for hybrid as our next step, correct?
Pat Grudy, President.
Yes.
Okay, or likely next step. It doesn't mean we would necessarily not, we could still make a decision to stay remote, but let's assume
that would be the next in progression, Pat. As we talk about progression, that would be the next in the progression.
Right. And can I assume that those options would include, our previous proposal was basically like a 50% hybrid kind of thing, where we know we had issues social distancing, and I know we've talked about an option for about 25%, correct? Which I think would get the kids into school, what, 1 day a week or more than 1 day a week?
Rita Fisher curriculum.
Rita, go ahead.
That would depend on the model the schedule and the model that we select. So there are various ways to bring students back in various percentages, and that's part of the discussion. What is the recommendation, and what does that mean in terms of how often students are actually in the building based on that schedule that's designed. So we're looking at multiple ways of doing that, and on Monday we would be able to define kind of, here are some alternatives, and here's what that would mean for student attendance on any given day.
Lisa Hassel, School Board.
Okay.
Can I ask, when are we going to be presented with the results of the student survey, and when will the parent survey go out?
Rita Fisher, Curriculum.
Rita, go ahead.
Rita Fisher, Curriculum.
We are reviewing the results of the student survey presently and planning to get the parent survey out very soon. The survey itself is designed by Panorama, and we have some options to provide some edits to that and make it more unique to the school district. It's a survey that's implemented in school districts across the country, so we have some opportunity to compare our results versus other school districts, but we also can modify that schedule, that survey somewhat. So the goal is to have that survey out ideally this week or early next week to our staff and to our community, with some unique modifications to address our e-school design that respondents can weigh in on and provide some open-ended responses to as well.
And that particular survey is not a preference survey, but it's really designed around e-school. So, Lisa, I don't know what your thought was there. If you were thinking more of a survey, you know, if you had your choice, would you send your child back to school or not? I don't know what your thinking was on the survey, or was it just around the e-school survey?
It's both.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's both.
And I think we need to know when, with all the framework and timeline discussions that we're going to have, when we're going to have the results, both of the e-school for both parents and community and students, but also the resurvey on preference. I think both of those, I'd like to know when we could expect to incorporate those metrics into this framework, because it's certainly not the guiding factor in these decisions, but it is one factor that we have to consider along with all the other parts of the framework and timeline that we've laid out.
Well, sure. That was going to be part of the conversation Monday, but I mean, we could anytime redo the survey that we did this summer. I mean, that's pretty simple.
And in order to implement any change in how we would return students to school, we would have to know specific numbers of which students would return to school and which students would remain in an e-school environment. If that option is offered, and that's something that would be discussed. But if we were to offer that option of some return and some remain in e-school, then definitive numbers would need to be known in order to plan for that scenario.
Yeah, and I think regardless of the I think we need that to inform what model we're going to choose. I mean,
Pat Grudy, President.
Let me just make it up. If half of our kids decided to stay virtual and half of our kids wanted back, well, then we might be able to take half of the kids that want to come back and build the model around that. On the other hand, if all of our kids want to come back, we know we can't do half the kids in the building kind of thing. So it seems to be me at this point, we need to resurvey that fairly quickly and get a number.
Jim Batson, VP.
I'll chime in here. I think it's a bit of a chicken and the egg kind of deal, though, because for a parent to make a viable decision on sending their child back into the building, they would want to know what that looks like. And if we can't describe in some way what that looks like, if it's half the kids or a fourth of the kids, or it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever that might be, without being able to describe that, I don't think we're going to get as accurate of a count. So it's got to be some happy medium. Like I say, it's sort of the chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Right. Well, let me ask it this way. So right now we're in a full virtual mode. Everybody's getting the same kind of instruction virtually. Teachers are either teaching from the building or from home to kids that are home. Okay. When we move to a hybrid model, first of all, I'm assuming some kids will stay home and some teachers will stay home. But when we move to the hybrid model, what are the instructional changes that we would likely see? How would instruction to the students some of which are in the building and some of which will still stay home. How will that change versus what we're doing today?
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
Well, we can describe that again, Pat, because that's part of what we went over with you this summer.
Yeah.
If we
Well,
so we can review that with you.
Yeah, but we had a lot of discussion this summer that basically the hybrid models we discussed this summer, at least as I recall those discussions, we basically had a bifurcated staff. We had a staff that was doing virtual and we had a staff that was teaching in the building, right?
Pat Grudy, President.
Yes, no, is that not how it was?
Pat Grudy, President.
That's how I recall it.
Go ahead, Rita.
Rita Fisher,
In
Curriculum.
the hybrid schedule that was discussed this summer, all staff members would be teaching both students who were present in school as well as students who were learning from home. So it rotated students coming in person and at home, roughly splitting the population in half. So
Well, but those at-home days were asynchronous days where the students learned on their own.
yes, that was the proposal this summer.
Okay, right. Okay, so
And in that model, there wasn't, or was there? There wasn't necessarily a choice to not come back at all.
no, there
Or
would
that would be a whole different kind of education.
no, there was. Yeah, go ahead.
Providing that option to families who, so the option we discussed if we went to a hybrid or to an in-person scenario, would there be an option for families to select distance learning?
Yeah, but
And then what would that educational difference
Karen
be?
Lundstedt, Secretary.
Right? I mean, if we did hybrid, and maybe we want to talk more about this Monday, but if we did hybrid, but some of the students didn't come at all, would they then in fact be educated in a different way by a different person? Because it didn't fit the system of the hybrid being there, not being there, and being there, not being there.
There are multiple options that we discussed for trying to handle that, right? Yeah.
Okay, but Rita, tell me let's imagine a transition to the hybrid. I mean, I'm just trying to prepare this for our discussion on Monday so we can get through this thing pretty quickly. Right now, we've got all our students with their 8 periods and 8 teachers, roughly, however it works out, right? Yeah. So now some of those students are going to say, hey, I'm concerned I can't come in, and they're going to, I imagine, have the same 8 teachers in the same 8 periods still in a virtual format. May or may not be wrong there. But then you're going to have other kids that, for whatever number of days we're able to accommodate them, will come into the building, but I'm assuming they're also going to keep their same 8 teachers, right?
Yeah.
All right. So sure. Again, look, where I'm going is it still looks to me like the teaching format's going to look a lot like it does today. Except sometimes I'm going to be in the building and sometimes I'm going to be at home.
If you're a student, yeah.
And I just want to make that clear, and I want to make that clear and say, and I'd really like some feedback from the students and say, okay, that is the likely next step here, which I do think is coming, and I think it's coming, to Prentice's point, probably on a timeline that's not a whole lot different than what our other local schools are doing. From a student perspective, how do you guys feel about that? I think I only see one of you left.
Student representatives.
So Amal, you get to speak for the entire student body. How about that?
Because we won't have Amal on Monday. All right. So Amal,
right? No, seriously. Go ahead.
If you want to abstain, I'm giving you that option. It's a big ask.
Okay, if I'm being completely honest, I have the presidential debate in the background. So can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's beginning to sound like.
Sorry,
no, that's okay.
No, you're good.
I got to admit, I've seen a few texts come in on it. It sounds like it's been pretty interesting.
No,
but in any event, it sounds to me like as we do move into hybrid, which would be our next step, which I do think we're moving towards, the actual teaching format may not change a whole lot from what it is today, except that sometimes you will be in the building and sometimes you will be at home.
Rita Fisher, Curriculum.
Again, if that's wrong, Rita, just jump all over it and say, no, Pat.
Well, the thing that would necessarily change and that we'll have to discuss is that, presently students have synchronous meetings every day, or every period. And if you've got some students at home and some students in class, the method by which we delivered synchronous lessons to students who were at home, the only way to do that would be live streaming every class. Right?
Exactly.
So it would be quite different. They'd just be, instead of engaging with the teacher directly, they'd be watching a live stream.
Okay. I still think that like whatever group you bring into the building for any form of learning, it's kind of like in context, like whatever group is in the building, they'll feel more like they'll appreciate it more than actually doing learning from home because it's whatever setting that you're doing it in. So even if like the teacher is synchronous, I feel like still that improves the climate. Is that what you're like asking?
Yes, that's what I was looking for. That helps.
Because if it's like, for me personally, if it was in the building, that would definitely improve like the social aspect because you still get to see your friends and talk to in person. And that adds that to it. So even though if that part is online, that's still like a compromise that a lot of students are willing to make because that still improves the total climate of the school.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That helps.
Okay.
That was good.
Great comment.
That was good.
Okay.
All right. Pat, to be continued on Monday.
Yeah.
Kevin Huber School Board.
Hey, Pat, I have actually a question, another question for Prentice. And that is, help me understand the dynamics of politics and meaning. We all know, we said in July, there's no right or wrong. I mean, this is a hard answer, right? This is really a hard question. That's why we all struggle with it. But if the governor in our state, he closed schools down last March. He just shut them down. He did not want to risk COVID in the community. Okay. He has taken a pretty hard stance on sports. We all know that. We see that in the papers all the time. I think he's probably considered one of the safer governors in the country, and Illinois is probably one of the safest states right now because of the actions he's taken. Whether you like him or not, I agree. You can dispute that our state is very safe. How do we reconcile that with he's not shutting schools right now? He is letting them open, and schools are schools are cautious about doing that. Well, he has those advisors. He has his metrics. He knows what he's doing. I think from a safety point of view, and he's not keeping us from opening. So why aren't we trying to move? I know why we did what we did in July. That's safety for sure. And to make sure we can do e-learning. And I think we've done a great job of that. So I think we checked that box off for sure. But now at the end of the day, I think we need to move quicker. I keep seeing a week we're going to do this, a week we're going to do that. We won't have the PPE bought. We won't have this decided. So in all honesty, I think we got to set a date like, okay, and I think I'm ready. I do want to make a motion that we do return the kids to their respective schools for learning in a manner deemed safe by the administration and approved by the board no later than October 19th. I think we have to put a date out there.
All right. So Kevin, let me comment before Prentice goes here. All right. Number one, I'm going to go back to.
If there's no second, Pat, we don't worry about. But you can just comment on it too. But there's not really a second right now. So
I would second that just because I do think that a reasonable strategic deadline to keep us accountable is important. I don't know if October 19th is that date. I think we have some things that we need to address before 2-3 weeks from now. But I think that the community as a whole will become more comfortable if we at least put a target. And maybe that's the sales background in me, but without a deadline, a strategic deadline that moves you forward, I think that the vagueness is a problem.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. At this point, we have no choice but to vote on it. So, but now I want to discuss it.
Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don Carmichael School Board.
So this wasn't on an agenda. It wasn't an agenda item to vote on tonight.
That is true. Yeah, that is true.
So legally, can we make this vote without having it on the agenda?
Well, it was under Prentice's report. It's an agenda item under his report. School reopening.
Yeah, but to Don's point, actually, all of the action items that we have that
Pat Grudy, President,
that we vote on have an asterisk on indicating to the public we're taking action tonight.
We have to
we don't have Rick Middleman on the line tonight, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay. So
I would
so
say-
I think your point is valid. I'm not sure we can.
Be cautious. Pat, could I make one comment here?
Go ahead, and then I want to.
Part of the conversation Monday is to plant that flag on the date, because we can't plant that flag until you have a deeper conversation with us. Because you can say, Kevin, to your point, you can pick a date. You can say October 19th, okay? And we may know that we're going to tell you on Monday we can't do October 19th, okay? So part of the conversation on Monday is, okay, if we're going to go this direction, okay, what's the date? And what do we need to what decisions we need to make to get there if we're going to go down that line? But I'm going to suggest you need to have that deeper conversation with us on Monday, so we can figure out what that date is, and that we're going to push off against. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's part of the purpose on Monday.
Yeah,
for us to do that deep dive together and plant the flag wherever it's going to be planted. And then we can figure out if you're going to make the decision to go there or not. I mean, out of respect to all 7 of you on the board, not knowing individually where you're all at, so we can have that discussion and then we can move on. And that would be my suggestion, and that was part of the purpose of Monday.
Yeah. Okay. So Kevin and Casey, I'm just going to tell you where I agree that it's time to plant a flag. Okay. I'm not comfortable that I would today plant that flag on October 19th, because to Prentice's point, I don't have enough information to know how feasible that is. And honestly, thinking about the 19th, I would struggle a little bit. But I think we need to plant the flag. And I would be comfortable if we can get to this meeting on Monday and plant a flag that I would say we have even an 80% confidence in hitting if A, B, C, and D happen and something unexpected doesn't happen. So I think we're this close to being able to do that. Okay. And I think we need to. There's no question about that. All right.
Kevin Huber, School Board.
No, so I think there's two issues. Is it a valid motion? I think it is a valid motion because it's on the agenda. I don't think putting an asterisk there, I know that's your practice, but Robert's rules say if it's on the agenda. But I think there's also an item, if somebody wants a motion to table it, it certainly can be tabled, and that's a privileged motion. And that way you don't have to vote on it, Pat.
Daniel Stanley, Business.
I really don't think that you can do that. We've had this come up before since we've been here of people challenging our motions, right. And usually it's been, they didn't know that we were going to vote on it. It's been, well, we had the asterisk. The whole point of it is to let the public know this is an item that the board would take action on, and that's why you have to publish it in advance and give them notice. And based on the reading of the agenda, we have not given the public notice that the board would be taking action on this item, just as an backing to this.
No, I got you guys, but I understand. You guys do know I did this for 20 years, right?
Yeah, no, I know.
And Robert's Rules of Order, if it's on the agenda, which it is,
Kevin Huber, School Board.
a motion could be made. Now, again, I've just given you an out. It can also be tabled.
I'll make a motion to table the topic.
Second.
Kevin Huber, School Board.
That's a privileged motion, so that needs to be voted upon.
All right. Any discussion?
What exactly are we voting on?
You're voting on tabling the motion.
Thank
correct?
you.
Kevin, is that correct?
Are we specifically tabling it to next week, or?
Until it gets brought, that's what's interesting. Until it gets brought up off the table by the maker. So again, okay. I can bring it back up at a future meeting. There is no definite time.
And if it comes up, if we bring it back up on Monday when we've had a chance to actually get the rich, full information and discussion.
Karen Lundstedt, Secretary.
Are we voting? Is that that's a meeting we can vote on at, right?
Yeah. We
committee meeting.
No?
So we'd have to, we just have to transition to a, probably a special meeting. But in the interim, to Kevin's point,
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
we were challenged on somebody from the community about 4 years ago on 2 of the hirings of people that are sitting in front of us today, okay, by a community member on just this point, Kevin. And, we had, and we even had it asterisked, but it wasn't described to that individual's
satisfaction
legal standard or what they thought was the legal standard. Okay. So we have kind of been down this path, and I don't know if there's a difference between, working, and certainly you're working with government agencies and groups too, but I'll get a legal opinion on this just so we know, just so we all know, because we're all trying to do the right thing. Okay. Including Kevin and Casey, right? Everybody's trying to do the right thing here. And
Hey,
we want to do it the right way.
Pat, can you call the motion?
Yes.
So,
Call the roll on the motion,
yeah, please.
which is the motion to table
Motion to
Kevin's motion.
Me, ready?
So a vote of aye here is to table the motion, just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay. Hessel.
Aye.
Huber.
No.
Munstead.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Rudy.
Aye.
Pat Grudy, President.
All right, motion carries. All right.
Great.
So, Prentice, let's get clarity too, because look, my understanding of all of this to begin with, in the very beginning, was it wasn't really an issue we had to vote on. If you look back to Stevenson, their board never approved going remote. All right, we chose to do that. I believe that was the right call. All right. So now, Prentice, we're just going to need to get clarity when we make a final decision. Call it in the spirit of the motion that Kevin articulated tonight. We should just get clear on when and where we need to approve that, if that's in fact the case. Okay.
Oh, sure. And perhaps you don't even have to vote on it.
That's what I'm thinking. Look, here's the deal. At the end of the day, whether we do or we don't vote on it, it's not going to stop us from saying we're going to put a stake in the ground. We're going to drive towards this date. Here's the 5 things we got to make happen in order to do that, and get on it. Okay. We can figure out whether or not we got to approve it or what we got to do. But that's a formality that we don't want to get in the way of what we need to do. Okay. So I believe Monday's conversation needs to be very targeted. We need to define very specifically what the hybrid format is we are planning to move to whenever that date is. And we need to start thinking about what that date needs to be. Okay. I'm certainly of the opinion that at this point, there are not metrics that are limiting us from moving forward. So if there are other things, we need to get those out in the open and get them resolved.
Don Carmichael, School
I would like to
Board.
find out what the results of surveys are. So I'd like that survey to move forward for both the parents in the community and the students.
Yeah, again, at least at a high level, though, I'd like to understand what kinds of things are we asking of the parents, and then I'll ask the same question of the students.
Well, Pat, here's the thing. Okay. So a couple of people have made this point. This is really important. If we're going to ask the parents if they want to send their kids to school or not, we have to describe what that looks like.
Yeah, no, agreed. I understand that.
Is it 50%? Is it 25%? Is it 30%? And here's what it would look like.
Yeah.
That's going to require that discussion on Monday. Now, coming out of that discussion on Monday, if we look at a couple of schedules and say this is what it might look like, all right, and we've got a direction, and we go, okay, it's 32% of the kids, or it's 25, or it's 50, right? Then we can describe that to parents, and we can turn that survey around like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We can do that the next day.
Yeah.
But we have to give some description, because remember some of the criticism this summer when we early surveyed our parents is that, we had to have an opportunity for people to see what remote learning looked like.
Yeah.
Right? We had to be able to describe it and what that was going to look like if that was an option for kids. So, that's part of the process here. But turning the survey around, that's not, a complicated process once we dig through Monday night and we all talk and we talk about if we're coming back, what's that look like, right? Again, what's the number? And then we can describe that to people, I think.
But I mean, I think, Prentice, and let's say we don't know the when number is. I think we need to frame this and say, look, when we're coming back, it's going to look like this. Okay, it's not really an if. It's inevitable that we will come back. I don't know the date yet, but I think it's inevitable. Whether that's this year, next year, 10 years, I don't know. And
I
don't mean-
agree, Pat. I think the vagueness is
Yeah.
causing.
Yeah, Prentice's point's very valid. I agree with him. Let's not, I don't want to ask people to say, are you going to send your kid into school or not send in your school? And we can't really tell them what in school looks like at all. All right. So that we need to get resolved Monday. We need to walk out of Monday and say, okay, our plan is when we do a hybrid, and I think rather than talk about percentage, we can say, look, we think we can accommodate X number of kids in Libertyville and X number of kids in Vernon Hills. And here's what, their period day is going to look like and how they're going to interface with their teachers. We need to create that picture so that people understand it. All right. But we said we were surveying parents, not to say, are you sending your kid in or not? We were going to survey parents. So what information are we asking parents to provide at this point?
It's essentially the same survey that we're using with the kids on eSchool.
Okay.
It's a panorama survey built around eSchool. Okay. It's to give us feedback on eSchool. That's the survey with the parents. Okay. Monday.
So it's targeted to eSchool. Do you or don't you like various things about eSchool?
Yep. And feedback that we can apply. So you heard the students talk today about the survey, and you heard them talk about, for example, the Wednesdays after Monday, the crunch of Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday, there's too much bunched in Wednesday, for example. So I think the feedbacks that we're going to get is going to show that. So do we want to make a change in how we're doing Wednesdays someplace down?
Okay.
Do we want to go from, synchronous to asynchronous?
Okay. Okay.
So that all was already in the works as a mechanism for us to get feedback on eSchool.
Okay, but the things that we're asking on and the feedback we get, based on that feedback, we can take action based on the feedback, right?
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
You mean on eSchool?
Yeah.
To make adjustments? Oh, sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. All right. I just want to we're surveying people. They're going to give us their feedback. I want to make sure that feedback is going to drive change or whatever it is we do.
Well, yeah, it's the whole reason we did the survey.
Okay. All right. I got it.
Because remember what Prentice said at the beginning to all the parents. He took off his glasses and looked at the parents and said, by the end of the year, we will have among the best remote learning in the United States.
Yeah.
And we know we're likely to have to pivot no matter what happens. We're going to have to pivot back. So this continual improvement process is really important to that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I don't have any doubt that our continued e-learning is part of our future, okay? I mean, it's not going to go away. Okay, it may not be 100% of our kids, but it's going to be some percent of our kids. Okay, so is there anything else we need to discuss? Otherwise, we just got to gear up for Monday. And I think Monday's goal is to really walk away and have the discussions we need to have with respect to what does our forthcoming hybrid look like, and what are our gaps and timelines to close those gaps in order to implement them. And depending on time, we can try to get a comfort level. I mean, I'd kind of like just a quick poll if I could. Where are people at? Just tell me in as few words as possible, where's your head at with respect to moving towards a hybrid?
Lisa Hassel, School Board.
Can we discuss that after we have had our meeting on Monday? I think for me, there's too many details I need to hear from the administration and from the principals before I can answer that question thoughtfully with all the information that I really need.
Okay, so that's fair. That's your way, and I accept that. Anybody else? Can anybody else comment?
Don Carmichael, School Board.
I'm not ready to go back. So I'm leaning towards remote right now for the foreseeable future, in part because kids are learning. I have been asking teachers over and over again, are kids learning? And their response is yes.
Yeah.
And then I ask them, how do you know? And they can answer that question.
Okay.
I don't think that the system that we are in right now is flawed. It is the best that we can do in an undesirable situation. And I think that rushing forward is a mistake.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Kevin Huber, School Board.
Hey, you know where I stand, so I have weighed in enough.
Casey Rooney, School Board.
I think you know where I stand too. I'm very anxious to hear details about the hybrid plan, and giving people the choice if they have personal situations that they feel they wouldn't be safe in the building. I want to make sure we accommodate that. But given our local metrics and all the other factors, I want to hear what we can do to bring kids back to school.
Karen Lundstedt, Secretary.
And I also would say I really want clarity on what exactly would it look like. So, John's description of the kids in the hallways and how hard it is to keep, I just, and you could feel that anguish of, it's nobody's doing anything wrong. They just can't physically do, or picturing, all these kids sitting alone at a lunch table. I just want to make sure that we're all visualizing and understanding what it is that we're hoping to do here and accomplish. And then what's that going to do to the educational experience of the students, the continuity of it. And I look forward to hearing from all of you on that. But also I was so surprised to hear the student reps reports on how engaged they were with everything. And then also, of course, that everyone's desperate to get back in the building. So all those different things rolled into one. I'm really looking forward to Monday.
Okay. Jim, you got anything you want to add?
I'll just make a comment. I think it's unfair for any of us to attempt to make a decision based on
Jim Batson, VP.
All the parameters we don't know and don't understand yet. So in terms of, my desire or my thought of us moving into a hybrid mode, I can't answer that now, but what I can answer is I'd like to have that other information as quickly as we can, and I think we're moving that way. And I think Monday night will be provide us with a lot more detail than we have now. And without that picture of what it's going to look like, I can't say that's what we want because we don't know what it is.
Kevin Huber, School Board.
Okay.
Hey, Pat, I have one final question for Prentice, and I don't think we surveyed the students on this one, but that is a survey of their emotional health. Have we seen, I think that's really actually important because I think Don's point is 100% right. I think, and again, this is going from a guy who has 2 kids who are through it. I think the educational proposition is fantastic right now. I think the kids are learning. I think it's hard. Of course it's hard. We knew it'd be hard, but I do think the kids are learning. Where I struggle with is I have a lot of close friends and not so close friends who have kids who are really struggling with a lot of emotional issues. And those aren't getting highlighted. And I don't know how we do that, but I do think we need to be conscious of that. We've surveyed the, what do you think of e-learning? But I don't know if we really, and it's hard, right? What kid's going to admit, yeah, you know what, I am struggling. You know what, I am drinking right now. I am doing this. I don't know how you're going to get at that, but maybe Brenda can help us at Libertyville, and I'm sure John has somebody at Vernon Hills. But I think that's pretty important information to have as well, because they're not only going back to school for education, right? Because we've proven that we can educate them remotely, e-learning. But I mean that's really a big thing that's weighing on me right now. So if we can get at that anyway, it would be really helpful for me.
Go ahead, Tom.
Some of that is in this survey. It is beyond just, the e-learning model. It talks to the kids about their health and wellness and their perceptions of that. So we do have some of that information, and certainly there are ways for us to identify more, but there's even a portion, even though this is an anonymous survey that students completed, there was a portion called Raise Your Hand where students were able to say, I would like somebody from the school to contact me directly because of various issues or experiences I'm having right now. And so that is something that we are gathering data on, and we'll be able to provide some preliminary information about.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
But it's, as we always talk about, the SEL, social emotional, that's at the heart of everything we do. I mean, we've set our 2 schools up around that model. So we can't, Kevin, to everyone's point, not just yours, but to everyone's point, including ours, we, cannot lose sight of that, for sure.
Prentice Lee, Superintendent.
Okay, Pat, I think that was another vibrant discussion. And we can probably move on to the consent agenda. I think that concludes the superintendent's report if you guys are, if we're okay at this point.
Okay, all right. Before we go to the consent agenda, though, I want to backtrack to one thing here. 1 second here.
Oh, that's right, Pat.
Yeah. So during the meeting, one resident submitted an email inquiring as to why his email wasn't read at the meeting. So I'm going to read it because I don't want anybody to think that we're not reading emails. There's no intent whatsoever to not read emails that were sent in that thought they should be sent in. So I'll read it, okay? It comes from Denny Norwood, who submitted it on September 25th. It says, hello, I'm writing to inquire about the progress the board has made to establish a plan that would allow students a choice to return to the classroom. In the time since you made a decision to go 100% remote learning, there have been almost no updates on a plan to return to the classroom. The 9/14/20 board meeting was very discouraging. Based on the discussions between board members, it was apparent very little progress has been made. It didn't seem like there was any desire to seriously explore a pathway back to the classroom. The discussion between board members about the return to school metrics was particularly telling. A simple Google search can provide you with the recommendations from CDC, IDPH, ISBE, LCHD. While I may not agree with all their recommendations, they're readily available and should not have been a mystery to the board. Many schools have their plans published on the school websites. Glenbrook North, New Trier are two examples. D128 appears to have nothing. This is not okay. You have a responsibility to our students and the taxpayers to do everything possible to offer our students that want in-person learning a choice. Enough time has passed, patience has been exhausted, and our school and students will be left behind if action isn't taken. If I'm wrong and you do have a game plan, please inform the public, as transparency is one of the building blocks of trust. I've written multiple emails asking if a committee's been formed to establish a roadmap back to the classroom. I'm still waiting for an answer. Sincerely, Danny Norwood. Okay, so that completes that. All right, consent vote agenda is listed. I'd ask for approval of the consent vote agenda, which was reviewed 2 weeks ago in our committee meeting.
Move to approve the consent vote agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Huber.
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Program and Personnel Committee Chairperson Batson.
Jim Batson, VP.
Thank you, Dr. Grudy. We have two items on the agenda here. We have the board policy updates. This is a first reading. We went over these in committee earlier in the month, but I'll just read them briefly. 2:26 uniform grievance procedures, 2:265 Title 9 sexual harassment grievance procedure, policy 5:10 equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment, policy 5:20 workplace harassment prohibited, policy 5:100 staff development program, policy 5:220 substitute teachers, policy 7:10 equal education opportunities, policy 7:20 harassment of students prohibited, and policy 7:180 prevention and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. And finally, policy 7:185 teen dating violence prohibited. So these are read into the record for our first reading. They will return next month for final reading and adoption. So no action needs to be taken. Moving on, we have some additional employment of employees as listed. So if we can have a motion and a second, we can vote on that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussions or comments on those? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please, Carol?
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel.
Aye.
Huber.
Aye.
Passes, and that concludes the Program and Personnel Committee.
Okay, Facilities and Finance Committee Chairperson Huber.
All right, thanks, President Grudy. I'm going to turn it over to Dan. I think we only have 2 items on the agenda. One we discussed in detail at the committee meeting. That's the fiscal year 20 employee compensation report. Dan, you want to just talk a minute about what that is and where it goes and stuff like
Daniel
that?
Stanley Business.
The Illinois School Code requires that the attached compensation report is presented at a board meeting. The board doesn't have to vote to approve it because it was from last year's information, but it has to be presented at a board meeting and then posted on our website and everything by October 1st. So we typically do this every September. So that's the information. And so one of the things that may be a helpful clarification is that this includes most, but not all of the compensation for most, but not all of our employees. ISB has kind of tricky definitions of who they want included and what they want included with each position. So that's the information that's there. So if there's a 0 there, that may be because, for example, like department supervisors, for some reason, they don't want any bonus reported, even though that would have been part because of the performance bonus is paid to everyone. Additionally, a report that was not part of the committee meeting report that's after that one, it's still in the same attachment though, is Open Meetings Act report that we have to publish and put on our website. That's for fiscal year 21 for total compensation over $75,000. So that's included for your reference as well. That's not required to be presented to you or for board approval, but just we usually like to throw it in there so that you're aware of what's going to be posted on our website.
Thank you. Again, we had extensive discussions about this. And so any other questions from any board members? Okay. And that gets published. Does that get published? Does this one get published on our website, Dan, too?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's move on and talk about ventilation, please.
All right. I'm going to turn this one over to Mark, who's been kind of working on this behind the scenes for a bit. And we were working with our attorney to make sure, everything made sense. One clarification though is these proposals that are attached to this, the terms and conditions. So like if you look at like the legal terms, those are not the exact right ones that we would propose for approval. Just to be clear, we have our own modified terms that I did not get into this attachment for you. So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Mark Copeman, B&G.
Okay, thank you, Dan. As we've been working with our consultants, looking at our buildings and our equipment, we discussed what is the best way for us to move forward with trying to meet new ASHRAE guidelines, air changeovers, at night, and evaluating our equipment for filtering. And alternate ways of achieving better air quality. So as we discussed it over time, moving forward with instead of using our consultants and then bringing our programming firm in to make adjustments and everything after we do it, this simplifies our approach and it gives us results right away. So we'd be doing the same thing with our consultants, except by using these 2 proposals, one's for Vernon Hills and one is for Libertyville. We can immediately implement custom programming as we do our analysis on our equipment to, for instance, to reverse economize with our outdoor air minimums, make them higher than normal. We'll be customizing our programs for nighttime air purges, which is recommended by ASHRAE and CDC, and also to customize daytime purges according to our schedule. So we would be basically what we're trying to do is change over the air in the building. It takes about 45 minutes. Depending on the equipment. That's basically the nuts and bolts of the proposal here. So we're looking for a motion, and what we'd like to do is we need two motions. One would be to approve the study, indoor air quality study for Vernon Hills High School in the amount of $14,750. Vernon Hills, the description of Vernon Hills equipment is large air handlers that handle the building. So there's a lot less equipment, even though we do have 30 some exhaust fans on the roof, on the roofs, plus all the new other equipment that has been installed in the building is for the construction. And then the second motion would be for Libertyville High School air quality assessment and building reprogramming, and that is the amount of $58,979. Libertyville is a lot more complex, has a lot more individual equipment. Each classroom, has a unit ventilator. Then we also have the large spaces with air handlers. So it's a lot more, like I said, a lot more complicated study at Libertyville High School.
And if I can just say a few words on the dollars. So essentially where this gets paid out of is district capital, Mark's capital budget. So Mark and I looked at his list and kind of what we have, with all the prices and everything. And so he's identified a few projects that are on hold or delayed he's bumping this as a priority up. So this wasn't on our capital list, that we would have looked at back in February or anything. This has kind of been identified, in the last few months here. And so we would be using basically the capital dollars from that capital budget, redirecting some of that towards this to pay for these proposals. So just that's on the dollar side.
Lisa Hassel, School Board.
And I understand that the proposals, although the contracts are not the actual contracts that we're going to be signing, the dollar amounts are correct. Is that right? Okay.
That is correct.
For the study and reprogramming, so the results of the study is the reprogramming. Is there any further results that will come out of the study, meaning follow-up recommendations beyond reprogramming?
Mark Copeman, B&G.
Yes, there'll be follow-up recommendations as we analyze the equipment. For instance, the filtering. Some of the older equipment you cannot change to a higher MERV filter. So in that case, do you add UV would be an option for an upgrade for better indoor air quality. So those type of suggestions will be made. We will look for, they'll be looking for areas in the building that might need improvement. Maybe we need to install an exhaust fan in a certain area to help do that air changeover. So there'll be recommendations along with this after the study that we can move forward with making improvements in our equipment and air quality for the future.
And I think even further than that, I think one of the things that Mark and I were talking about is that the information from the study may very likely lead to priority items that are on his capital list for next summer to get done. So I think that's part of the anticipation that there'll be HVAC work that will probably take up a good portion of our capital work for summer 2021. Is that right, Mark?
Yes. This is could be a driving force into what we do for next summer. As we learn from this, our equipment is running. We have always been doing the changeovers and everything that we needed to do per code, but this is an enhancement. And we have a lot of equipment that's aged. So with COVID and air quality, my anticipation is that we will adjust things that we're going to do and concentrate more on a lot more HVAC upgrades, especially at Libertyville High School.
So, Mark, if I understand this properly, what they're going to do is they're going to refit our systems in such a way, to reoperate our systems in such a way that we're putting more air into the building than we would normally.
Correct.
We're taking outside air and putting that in, and then that helps to blow germ air out of the building. When we do that in the winter months in particular, we're going to have to heat a lot more air.
Correct. Yes. And there's certain ways, there's certain processes to do it.
Apparently, LHS is notorious for being hot and cold in various places. So is that going to have an impact on the comfort of the rooms? Like everything's going to operate normally. We're just going to throw more heat into the buildings in order to compensate for the additional fresh air?
So we will schedule a time frame in order to do these air purges, especially winter months are critical. You take in the temperature outside, you take in relative humidity. There's a bunch of factors get calculated in how you do it and what is the optimal time to do it. So yes, we will schedule that. So if we're coming into the building at 7:30 in the morning, the building will be at normal temperature. So yes, obviously it will take more energy in the winter, but we're purging the air in the building as per recommended by ASHRAE.
So this happens at nighttime?
Yeah, there is nighttime, and there is also the option for a daytime purge, which is a possibility at the end of the school day. We haven't discussed it yet. Maybe at the end of the school day, between that and sports, that we could implement maybe in some areas where we're doing a purge of air, but definitely at least one time a day.
So during the day, we're not opening the dampers more to get more fresh air in all day long. It's only happening at night or maybe after school sometimes?
No, with this adjustment, it will bring in more air during the day, but they're calling it an air changeover. So what you go in a certain mode where you open up a larger percentage. And try to change over your air and use your exhaust fans. You control all that to change the pressure in your building to exhaust it and bring more fresh air in a quicker period of time. Presently, we are running and doing the 5 air changeovers per hour. Some areas 6. It depends on the piece of equipment, size of equipment in the room. But we want to increase that, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. And so that's where the study will look at airflow, filters, what adjustments to make, so you can achieve the best quality air you can with the equipment that you have.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Huber, School Board.
All right, Mark, you want to repeat the two motions? Do you want to make one general motion that includes both Vernon Hills and Libertyville? Do you want to make 2 motions? What do you want to do? Because I think we'll have a motion as presented by you. So go ahead and make the motion so somebody can make it.
And I would just say that I would just, it's authorization to sign because I want to make sure we have the right terms. So I don't want anyone to think that those legal terms are the ones we're approving, because we're not.
So, okay.
Mark Copeman, B&G.
Okay. So I'm looking for the board to make a motion to approve upon completion of modifying the terms. The proposal to do the Vernon Hills High School indoor air quality assessment and building programming at a cost of $14,750. And the Libertyville High School indoor air quality assessment and building reprogramming at a cost of $58,979. And the work will be done by the Train Corporation.
Can I have that motion, please?
So move.
Thanks, Jim. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any other further discussion on this? Hey, Mark, I just had one question. I got kind of lost in all the details there.
Okay.
Is there anything extra we're going to need to? Are you going to present anything extra to us on Monday that we need to do ventilation-wise to get this potentially get kids back in school?
On Monday, well, this is part of bringing it up to think. There are a couple areas at Libertyville High School. For instance, the dark room.
Yeah, you don't need to go into. I just
So
this
things
is
like that.
This is part of the plan. This is part of the plan to get
This is part of the plan to bring the kids back into school and verifying our equipment, making
Thank
sure
you.
everything's safe.
Appreciate it. All right. Any other questions of Mark and Dan? All right, Carol.
Rooney.
Aye.
Batson.
Aye.
Carmichael.
Aye.
Grudy.
Aye.
Hessel. Oh, Lisa, you're muted.
My apologies. My dog was barking.
He said aye. Okay, Huber.
Aye.
Lundstedt.
Aye.
Are we good? I think that concludes the facilities. We have anything else you want to ask Dan while we got him?
No.
All right. That concludes the facilities and finance. Back to you, Pat.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. No ISB. Did you say, Karen, was there anything from CEDAW? I apologize.
Karen Lundstedt, Secretary.
You know, just the latest update is basically they're continuing to try to work toward bringing the kids back, and I have a tentative date or a date set for some of the schools for October 19th. But again, it's just, you know, it's kind of reiterating, but they're still on schedule to try to do those things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else from anybody?
Pat Grudy, President.
All right, otherwise I want to go back and reframe Monday night. Monday night, I think we need to walk away with a design of our proposed hybrid that we would move to if we were to give people a choice.
Lisa Hassel, School Board.
Okay.
So we will be working towards agreeing on a framework. Is it our intent to also have a date of return on that?
So what I would say is we need to have a design of the hybrid that would meet any safety requirements we believe are, I'll call it, essential. So, for example, if we insist, which I believe is consistent with the guidance right now, that you have to social distance in the building if you're not wearing a mask, that is one thing that will dictate what we can and can't do. Okay? But at least I guess my comment would be we should be driving towards a date that we think we could achieve what we need to achieve. All right?
I think that we will walk away with some, maybe most of a framework, but that we will not be able to guarantee a date when that framework can be complete on Monday. I just want to set the expectation for the community realistically.
Okay, I don't think we're looking at a guarantee because any of our metrics could show a significant uptick over a 3 or 4 week period that would blow out of the water anything that we may have planned, okay? But I think we need to communicate to the community that if A, B, C, and D happen, I'll make it up. A is the metrics remain where they are, okay? You know, B, whatever facility modifications we believe we need to finish, get done, whatever else we put on that list, we should be driving to a date that we can do that. Now, again, to at least recognize Don's concerns, it may very well be that there are educational concerns with whatever that hybrid format is, okay? And I guess we can have a conversation with respect to whether that means we decide that we're not going to give residents a choice, or whether we respect that we may have some concerns, but those being different, let's say, than a safety concern, we believe the resident can make the choice with respect to what educational program they believe their kids need to be in.
Jim Batson, VP.
Pat, I think I would add to that the expectation that, as we discussed, that almost immediately after that, once we have at least a framework of sorts, that we could communicate that to the community and get a read for how many students would be coming back in the building.
Yeah, and Jim, and I think that's a good way to frame it, in the sense that we need to walk away with something that we're ready to survey the residents for. So we can at least, if we offer you this and we offer you that, all right, so imagine the menu is the current program plus something that is a hybrid. Which of those 2 menu items will you choose? Okay. I'm concerned if we can't at least get to that point, this will get very challenging. Okay. All right. So look forward to Monday. We're just kind of warming up for November and December. We get to see each other a lot. Okay. All right. Anything else tonight? Okay. All right. With that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Not roll call, please.
Jackson,
Aye.
Carmichael,
Aye.
Grudy,
Aye.
Hessel,
Aye.
Huber,
Aye.
Lundstedt,
Aye.
Rooney.
Aye.
Is that everybody?
That's everybody.
Okay. Motion carries. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks
Good
for
night, everyone.
Night.
Well.